Zelda Invades Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Shadow Murmurs. Not to mention that Scarlet Witch's brother is not dead yet, and her power has not been fully unleashed. Even the awakened version of Scarlet Witch can hardly withstand Link's attack. But Gay's mask has been destroyed by the power of the Reality Stone, revealing his face without facial features. He saw Link draw his sword to fight Wanda, and hurriedly shouted, "Wanda, don't fight Link, throw Zelda into the blood pool of all spirits." Link's face turned cold, and even Midona could feel that Link's breath had changed. Zelda is Link's reverse scale, and anyone who dares to threaten Zelda will anger Link. Although the 3 Zeldas lying on the ground are all fakes, even so, Link couldn't help but feel murderous in his heart. It's that easy to anger Link. But just as Link's anger gradually rose, Scarlet Witch shook her head, looked at Lord Koji in surprise, and shouted, "I can't do this." Lord Koji was stunned and said angrily, "Didn't you see that Link almost beat your brother to pieces?" Quicksilver, lying in Lord Koji's arms, hurriedly said weakly, "No, I just broke a leg. It's not disabled." Scarlet Witch shouted, "Then I will just fight back at Link." "So you snatched Zelda back, just to throw her into the blood pool to sacrifice to Ganon?" Lord Koji said angrily, "What else? Otherwise, what would I spend so much effort to dig and pour out a pool of human blood for?" Quicksilver was stunned, and Wanda was also stunned. Scarlet Witch stopped attacking Link across the pool, withdrew her energy, and stared blankly at the blood pool of all spirits in front of her, looking at Lord Koge in shock. "Didn't you say it was all lava?" Loki, who was lying on the ground and died, opened his eyes, as if he was resurrected, and shouted, "Please. There is such a pool of boiling blood, and the bloody smell in the cave. Can't you smell it? And, I'm not Zelda." Loki suddenly turned back to his original form, and the 2 Zelda bound by rocks around him turned into the bodies of the Yage team ninjas. "You know the name of this pool is the All-Spirit Blood Pool. Why are you so shocked?" Scarlet Witch looked embarrassed. "I thought Lord Koge just named it this, because it was cool. They are funny anyway." Link also retracted his power, and looked at the 2 Scarlet Witches and Quicksilver, who now looked older than him. How naive are they to be deceived? But they are also right. These ninjas are stupid and only know how to eat bananas. They can't be seen as a group of villains who kill without blinking an eye. Appearances are always deceiving. By the way, just looking at Link's appearance, who would have known that this harmless and cute boy had killed countless enemies? Lord Koge looked at Zelda's transformation into Loki, and he cried out in shock, "Oh my god. Zelda actually had plastic surgery." Quicksilver rolled out of Lord Koge's arms in a hurry, enduring the pain, and dodged to the side, looking at Lord Koge in shock. In Quicksilver's eyes, Lord Koge was a man with an arrogant personality, but a good temper. He loved to sleep on a banana waterbed that only children liked, and loved to eat bananas. He always liked to imitate Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. He was pretentious, and every move was weird and funny. But he treated Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch very well, and taught them how to control their abilities. But as the leader of a ninja organization, Lord Koge was also a hidden master. He had always deliberately prevented Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch from contacting the dark side of the Yage team. Seeing that Scarlet Witch was unwilling to attack Zelda, Link's opinion of these 2 naughty kids who didn't listen to their mother and ran out to join the evil organization improved. Beat them gently later. Midona and Pepper ran to help Loki break the rocks on his body. Link turned to look at Master Koge. Master Koge also stood up. Seeing Link rushing towards him with the Master Sword in hand, and seeing the fearful eyes of the 2 children, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, Master Koge's heart sank. He still remembered the scene of being defeated by Link last time. It was very easy. Seeing Link rushing towards him, Master Koge exhaled, and his eyes became firm again. The sword light illuminated a large scene. It slashed towards Link, but was blocked by the invincible red light shield again. The reality gem particles in Link's other hand suddenly followed the sword light, passed through it, and rushed towards Master Koge again. But Lord Gay suddenly remembered that he was also a ninja. He turned around and disappeared in an instant, then appeared in the sky above the blood pool of all spirits. His chubby body did not stay in the air for long before falling into the boiling blood pool. Midona and Pepper had just pulled Loki out of the rock. Suddenly, they saw some strange fluctuations in the blood pool next to them. After a circle of ripples, the liquid in the blood pool suddenly turned solid, like a large piece of turbid red gem. Link walked forward. Loki, Midona, and Pepper hurriedly hid behind Link. It was unclear what happened. Scarlet Witch suddenly pointed at Ganon's throne and shouted, "It seems that there is a shadow there." Everyone looked over and saw a thin and long shadow suddenly appear on the tall Ganon throne, leaning there. On the head of the shadow, 2 red lights suddenly appeared in the area of its eyes. The 2 lights formed a line and shot directly into the blood pool in the center of the cave. The solidified blood pool suddenly cracked. A large amount of black smoke was released from the crack. A skinny man walked out of it. A strange laugh came out of his mouth. Link suddenly jumped up and stabbed the skinny man with a sword. Through the black eyes, he walked forward and saw that it was a severely dehydrated Lord Kage. Lord Kage's mental state suddenly became very strange after being soaked and mutated in the blood pool. The mask was torn, and on his face without facial features, a slanted wound suddenly opened, and a bunch of dense eyeballs suddenly spurted out of it. Link's scalp exploded. As soon as he approached, he found that Lord Kage's originally strong power fluctuations, after being soaked in the blood pool of all spirits, were directly strengthened by at least 5 times. The power of the holy triangle on his chest shone brightly. Link swung his sword down. A strange laugh suddenly came out of the face without a mouth. Lord Kage suddenly trembled, then turned into a burst of dry powder and disappeared. Link remained silent. His body alertness increased greatly, and he turned around and slashed with his sword. The half-condensed Lord Kage behind him turned into a burst of dry powder again, and rushed directly towards Link's chest. The dry powder condensed into a skinny hand, and 5 fingers pierced into the clothes. Black lines began to spread on Link's neck. Chapter 302, Trouble at Both Ends. Link felt a horrible force that began to penetrate his body, starting from his flesh and blood, corroding his life. Like a burst of cold flames, Link's face was immediately covered with evil black lines. On the arm that pierced Link's chest, the cracks that originally appeared on Lord Kage's face immediately appeared. The pupils of the eyeballs in the cracks shrank and began to tremble violently, as if they were mocking Link. Although there was no mouth, it still made a creepy laugh. This voice was completely unrecognizable as Lord Kage, as if it was possessed by evil spirits. Hehehe. Link, you forced me to use Lord Ganon's divine power. Do you know how terrifying it is now? Since I can't sacrifice Zelda, I have no choice but to sacrifice you. The black Ganon pollution seeped out from the arm and quickly covered Link's entire body. Midona shouted, "Link." Pepper saw the Ganon pollution crawling on his shoulder, so he shivered in fear and climbed onto Link's head. Link picked up Midona, Pepper, and Fang, who was still sleeping, and threw them out. Then he was covered by Ganon pollution. Scarlet Witch was stunned, and Quicksilver sat down. Loki also hurriedly asked Midona, "Where is my brother? Where is Stark? Where is the captain? Why are there no other helpers here?" In New York, Stark, Rogers roared and knocked over a robot with a punch, and then threw the shield out. The colors of the 5-pointed star pattern on the surface were mixed together. The edges were not sharp, but the power was full. An arc swept over, and the upper bodies of 2 robots along the way fell to the ground, and the lower bodies were half a beat slower before they collapsed stiffly. "Look at what you did." Rogers originally thought that Ultron would have problems. After all, as an old man who has lived through World War II, Tony is not the first scientist who has caused big troubles because of scientific research from World War II to the new century. But this time made Rogers particularly angry because he should have been able to stop it. Why did I believe Tony's lies in the first place? Tony also hurriedly put on his half-covered Iron Man suit and hurriedly dealt with the robots that pounced on him like a pack of wolves. These robots were originally Tony's loyal minions. They were the artificial legion that Tony was proud of, and they were not ambiguous about killing and setting fire. But when these minions lost control, Tony began to reflect on whether this artificial mechanical legion was too strong. I don't know. There is a problem with that variable. Tony raised his hands, without Friday adjusting the calculation, and directly calculated through his own human brain, and shot 2 lasers in advance, killing the 2 robots immediately, and their heads fell to the ground. In the middle of the living room, Ultron looked coldly at the busy Avengers. After his extremely intelligent electronic brain calculated, protect the Earth, avoid harm, harm the Creator, human beings themselves, eliminate human beings. A complete and speechless set of logic was sorted out. So, this artificial intelligence AI, which was born from the core of the Mind Stone, went from a defender of human beings to an evil villain who simply killed human beings, and ended it all. Banner hid everywhere and shouted, "Tony, you didn't listen to my advice. I'm going to transform." "No," Natasha shouted, "this building has been attacked once. If you transform again, we will be buried by the ruins." Thor, who had hammered down a robot, quickly turned his attention to Ultron. As the future king of Asgard, although Thor is sometimes stupid, his ability to grasp the key points is far better than that of ordinary people. He wants to directly destroy Ultron, who controls this group of violent robots. So he quietly crouched down, passed over the collapsed sofa and a stain of red wine, and suddenly roared, and jumped up suddenly. A hammer of lightning brought sparks, and the sparks brought strong winds. He aimed at Ultron's head more accurately than a sniper, and his forward swing was extremely fast. His body was like a spring, and he hit Ultron with a hammer. Immediately, Ultron's head exploded, and lightning followed the messy metal objects, spreading all over Ultron's body, and then Ultron's body collapsed. Thor raised his hammer and yelled, "In the name of the North God, Ultron is me." Tony shouted helplessly, "Stop yelling. These robots are all Ultron." Half of Thor's roar was swallowed in his throat. Rogers glared at Tony fiercely, "It's all your fault. Tony, this." Back to Loki's perspective, he was waiting for the other Avengers to come to the rescue, and because of the big mess Tony made, the other Avengers were also stretched to the limit. If Loki knew, he would probably be grateful that why is there so much trouble on Earth? Fortunately, I don't rule it, otherwise I would be annoyed to death. Midona hurriedly transformed into an adult again, took out an iron sword and stabbed forward. The sword was surrounded by purple light, erratic, like a ghost. But as soon as it rushed forward, it was repelled by Ganon's curse. This powerful force made Midona change color, and Pepper hurriedly ran to put on his small iron battle suit. Loki looked left and right, and shouted at Scarlet Witch, "I heard that Link saved you. Don't be ungrateful. Hurry up and save Link." Scarlet Witch muttered, "We seem to be enemies, right?" But she also realized that the current situation was wrong. It seemed that the Yage team she belonged to was not as good as she thought. She looked at her brother, and Quicksilver nodded and said, "Save Link." Scarlet Witch also nodded, and hurriedly stretched out her power, like a piece of silk paddling in the water, passing through the air. Scarlet Witch was familiar with the power of Lord Koge, and she wanted to try to disintegrate Lord Koge's energy structure. However, as soon as her own energy came into contact with the outer layer of Ganon pollution, Scarlet Witch's body paused, and blood quickly oozed from her eyes and nose. Her body seemed to have been drained of blood, and she instantly became weak, and fell to the ground. Scarlet Witch knelt on the ground, and fell weakly in Quicksilver's arms, looking at the Ganon pollution wrapped around Link with horrified pupils. She murmured, "No, that's not Lord Koge's power. That power doesn't even belong to this world. I can't do anything." Midona bit her lip and whispered, "Link, I will save you no matter what." Just as Midona was about to think so, a voice suddenly came from her heart. She was stunned. At this time, Pepper had pulled out the Iron Man suit that was stuck in the rock, put it on, and rushed towards Link howling. Midona hurriedly hugged Pepper and stopped him from passing. Midona's eyes never left Link. "Let me go, let me go," Pepper cried. Midona shook her head. Just now, she remembered Link's words in her heart. "Don't worry, leave it to me." Chapter 303 Repayment. Link's voice was very calm, not at all like he was under a fatal attack. This calm voice made Midona feel much calmer. She knew that Link's ability to deal with danger was more than 10 times hers. As long as Link remained calm, it would be difficult for him to get into a dangerous situation. Moreover, if Link really encountered danger, then the first one to take action was not Midona, but the redfish girl who was hidden in Link's body, always gentle and smiling. The ghost girl has not appeared yet to use the power of protection to repair Link's body, which means that Link should be no big deal. Oh, right. Midona also heard a hint of anger in Link's tone. Link was angry, and it was still the kind of deep resentment. What was he going to do? Midona was confused. In fact, as Midona guessed, Link was indeed very angry, and this anger had not been for a day or two. In fact, Link had been holding his breath. After coming to the Marvel world, Link was almost always like a fixed tower defense game, and could only passively deal with the attacks coming, but could not take the initiative to attack. Ganon always sent people to cause trouble to Link, but Link didn't know where Ganon was, or what his current state was. This was completely opposite to Link's previous experience. In the past, Ganon or some other big villain would hide in a fixed corner, waiting for Link to go through all kinds of difficulties and dangers and run over to destroy them. But now, it is Ganon who has been monitoring Link in a dark corner, constantly sending people, or bewitching Marvel's original villains to constantly stimulate Link. This passive response has long made Link very unhappy. The continuous injuries of the Sky Princess made Link even more furious. Until now, this girl with a weak heart is still blaming herself. She feels that she has brought danger to Link and other Zelda. After the 2 accidents, the Sky Princess's spirit has not recovered her original liveliness. She is in a bad mood all day, although she smiles on the surface. But whether it is Link or other Zelda, they can see the Sky Princess's malaise. As a guard knight who always protects Zelda, Link, he can't tolerate such things. Link was wrapped in Ganon pollution, and his chest was recondensed into a skinny adult Kage, like a mad mummy entangled Link, constantly attacking Link's body with the power of a ghost. Link's body was bleeding severely, but his physique was very repellent to Ganon pollution. Under such a brutal attack, his skin had long been severely corroded. If the Ganon pollution bounced off in an instant, then Link's body would be bloody. Midona made a mistake in judgment, that is, Mipha did not appear. In fact, Link deliberately stopped it. Although Mipha's urgent call was always in his ears, Link never responded. What he did now was to endure. Loki looked at the Ganon curse around him, which was so thick that it almost formed a black fog. He looked at Midona in adult form and asked, "How about we run away first?" Midona looked at Loki coldly. Since Midona was now an adult, the fierceness on her face could not be covered up by the cuteness of childhood. She looked at Loki with her charming willow-shaped eyebrows, and her voice was very clear. "What? Do you want me to complain to Link? Or do you think Link will lose to that fat guy?" Loki spread his hands and gave up leaving. Despite this, he was still worried. After all, Link's current condition was not good. What if he died? Although Loki didn't dare to go against Link now, and was even afraid of Link in his heart. But in fact, even as strong as Odin, there are times when he is weak. That was what Loki saw with his own eyes. Link would also be injured and defeated. He couldn't understand the trust that Midona unconditionally believed in a fully suppressed boy who could fight back and win. The Scarlet Witch was contaminated by Ganon and her body was temporarily incapable of action as she was fighting against this unprecedentedly powerful force. Quicksilver was even worse, with injuries on his hands and feet. He could do nothing except sit there. The shadow on Ganon's throne became clearer and clearer. The image of a human-shaped Ganon gradually appeared. Outside the cave, the 3 princesses who were quietly waiting for Link in the hidden corners all felt a chill in their bodies. They all felt a familiar and scary person appearing underground. Princess Washan was responsible for protecting the other 2 princesses. She had to keep calm, so she immediately said, "Don't be afraid, leave it to Link first." Even though Natasha didn't have the sensitivity of Zelda, she felt something was wrong. It seemed that the air around them was colder than before. It was cold, but the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder, as if an unprecedented and unrepeatable world-destroying war had taken place. It was okay that the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. But why was the air so thin? The oxygen content in the surrounding air seemed to have decreased a lot. Peppa shrank in Midona's arms in fear, and Midona was not much better. Loki looked at the shadow that was becoming clearer and clearer, and he remembered the various strange sounds that appeared in his ears when he was bewitched by Ganon's power before. His eyes were quickly distracted, and he began to sweat continuously. Quicksilver looked at his sister with embarrassment. We seem to have really taken refuge with a great demon. The Ganon pollution enveloped Link, who was motionless, and came to the front of Ganon's phantom. Ganon's phantom stretched out his hand, and the red light in his eyes once again reached out to Link. The hero of light, the punishment from heaven has come, and you have become a puppet of darkness and my slave. Midona took a deep breath and rushed over, exclaiming in her heart, this is the power of Ganon's body. Link is too proud. She no longer obeyed Link's instructions, and rushed to rescue Link. The power of Ganon's body suddenly made the eyes of the people around him black. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch suddenly found that the strange power in their bodies became crazy and violent, and began to backfire on their bodies. Ganon's phantom made everything around them crazy. Just when the red light in Ganon's phantom's eyes was about to touch Link's body, the ball of Ganon pollution wrapped around him suddenly cracked with a golden light, as if there was a star hidden inside. Ha! Link shouted, and the power of the Holy Triangle gushed out of his body. The Master Sword appeared in his hand again. The blade was golden and the stars inside were spinning rapidly. The appearance of Ganon greatly stimulated the inner power of the Exorcist sword. Snap! The sword light instantly shattered the two red lights that attacked. Among the scattered Ganon contaminated debris, Link's blood-stained face appeared. His bright, angry, clear, and pure blue pupils stared at his enemy. Link shouted, and the power penetrated into the sword. Mithra emerged from behind him, hugged Link, and his skin quickly repaired. He left with one sword. Link had been waiting for a long time to take the initiative. The anger and grudges in the past were fulfilled at this moment. Chapter 304, Disintegrate Ganon. As soon as Link saw the Phantom, he knew that it was the power from Ganon's origin. His strength has greatly increased, and he has been practicing diligently in his free time, never slacking off. Not only has he gained from his adventures, but even when he is not fighting, Link is constantly improving his strength. He makes progress almost every day, and every day is a change. He knows that there is an unprecedented Ganon Demon King watching him. Lord Kage is certainly strong, but Link is no longer the same as before. He is no longer the little hero who would be shaken by a blow from Lord Kage. Before Link, there were countless times when he could defeat Lord Kage. Even though his speed is not as fast as Quicksilver, Link has enough time to destroy Lord Kage before he jumps into the blood pool. But Link is just waiting for Lord Kage to make the final move, waiting for Lord Kage to attract the Demon King Ganon. Give Link a chance to actively counterattack. The power of the Triangle of Life quickly poured into the sword, and then under the influence of the Master Sword, it was transformed into a sharper sword energy. The power came from the heart, and gathered into the Sword of Exorcism. Behind Link, a large ball of blue flames appeared, and 4 heroes appeared behind him at the same time. Darkle roared, staring at Ganon with his eyes wide open. This bastard was killed by Link twice. How can he still be alive? Zappo sighed, stretched out a hand, and pointed his index finger at the shadow. The shame of the Gerudo tribe will naturally be eliminated by me. Zappo. Libba raised his chin arrogantly, laughed softly, and a strong wind blew around him. That's right, Link. When you need help, call me in time. As soon as Mithra appeared, she hugged Link. Her body faded, and the power of protection merged into Link's body like smoke, stabilizing the increasingly violent power in Link's body. She lowered her head and whispered, I won't let you get hurt. Link nodded, his eyes condensed. The momentum suddenly changed, like a star explosion, spreading powerful power. Even Midona, Loki, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch who were hiding far away at the edge of the cave. The fear of Ganon in their hearts was overwhelmed by another stronger fear from Link. Midona saw at a glance that Link's aura was much stronger than Ganon's phantom. At this moment, Link's past dangers, victories, battles, courage, fatigue, pain, and all the powerful forces brought by his past experiences completely burst out. Just like the dawn after the dawn. This is an underground cave. Link is like a star, illuminating this place, spreading dazzling light, and even his figure is blurred. Ganon's phantom became alert. He immediately sensed that Link's aura was rising rapidly. He immediately prepared to escape, but time seemed to pass very slowly. Ganon's phantom was a group of energy particles from the main body and a part of Ganon's will. It could have disbanded quickly, but some force slowed down the time around it and fixed the composition of the phantom, making Ganon's phantom a living target for a short time. The surroundings were wrapped in other particles to form an independent space. Ganon's phantom was restricted, and Link jumped into the air and immediately activated bullet time. Time and space were restricted, just for Link's all-out attack. The abilities of the four heroes swept into Link's body like a whirlwind. At this moment, his body was glowing strongly, as if it was about to transform from a flesh and blood body into light. The sword was filled with electric light, and the light blue electric light was almost transparent at this moment. And a strong wind shield wrapped around the sword body suddenly spread out, forming two wind wings. Stab. Carrying the great power of Darkle, Link stabbed the two red eyes of Ganon's phantom with the sword. Boom. The strong energy poured in, creating a circular energy aftermath, which burst out from Ganon's phantom brain, causing Ganon's body to briefly disperse, but then quickly condensed. Ganon's phantom screamed in pain. The sound was like a cow's cry, more like the wail of a monster from hell. Although there were no words, in Link's heart, Ganon's will was clearly resounding. The power of flesh and blood cannot destroy the shadow form. Link's eyes were already bleeding tears, his shoulders were shaking, and Mytha, who was hugging him behind him, was also twisting his soul. The power of the four heroes was also growing rapidly in Link's previous thrills. Up to now, Link has rarely been in such a situation of being unable to hold on due to excessive use of his energy. Link used almost all of his own strength. He thrust out a sword and directly pierced the soul carrier inside Ganon's phantom, and the energy burst violently. This attack has already caused damage to Ganon, but this is far from enough. Link must take this opportunity to weaken Ganon as much as possible. In another will of Ganon, you are exhausted and have no qualifications to fight me. Mortals are born weak. Is that so? Just behind him, the soul states of the four heroes began to fluctuate. Even Mytha was about to lose the violent energy in his body. Link's body was torn apart, just like a ball of cotton being torn into 3 parts. There were 3 Links, one in front of Ganon, one behind Ganon's left, and one behind Ganon's right. The power of clones. Ganon finally panicked. He knew this move. The other 2 Links immediately stabbed their swords into Ganon's phantom brain. 3 master swords, 1 real and 2 virtual, 3 energies of the same origin gathered together. A pure white ball of light was born, quickly absorbing the power of the 3 Links. In an instant, Ganon's newly condensed phantom head was crushed into basic energy particles again. Bang! With a grit of teeth, wings appeared behind him, trying to pull out the master sword, and the 2 clones of Link disappeared in front of him. Link quickly retreated and heard Ganon's disgusting screams behind him and the violent energy ball that even the creator himself could not control. Like the explosion at the beginning of the world, the violent energy spread out. Ganon's original energy, as well as a part of his self-will and soul power, quickly disintegrated into the world's most basic material particles in this unprecedented energy vortex. Everyone on Earth, including the Avengers who were exhausted physically and mentally from dealing with Ultron, felt a chilling tearing sound. A part of Ganon's soul was destroyed by Link. Link quickly picked up Midona and Pepper, stretched out his whip with one hand, and hooked the terrified Loki. Then he swung past Loki and let him grab Quicksilver and the Nihilite Witch. Then he immediately flapped his wings and boiled out of the cave. Behind him was a violent energy explosion. At the center of the explosion, a large number of certificates of bravery and order flew out, crossed the aftermath of the explosion, and rushed to Link's back. Chapter 305 Where's Link? In the dirt. The 3 princesses had been sitting in the grove nearby, with a fluffy blanket under them, sharing the snacks they had brought with Natasha. They were all made by Sky Princess when she was practicing cooking, and she planned to give them to Link when he was hungry on the way. But during this tense waiting time, the 4 girls decided to eat some sweets to relax themselves. Natasha rested her elbows on her knees, looking in the direction of the cabin, with a bitter smile on her lips. So we came here just to wait for Link to win? Zelda's eyebrows curved slightly, and she smiled with some nostalgia. It has always been like this. Link has always fought alone. Sky Princess and Zelda's bird were having fun. Since Jarvis was temporarily transplanted to Zelda's side, the bird became the carrier of Jarvis and became more vivid. Sky Princess was forcing the bird with Jarvis' soul, to eat the biscuit crumbs in her palm. She missed her own root bird a little. Princess Washan was eating the biscuits silently. She felt that they were a little too sweet and burnt, but she just ate them one bite at a time and didn't care. Because her attention was always focused on observing the surroundings. She shared most of Link's guarding tasks. She protected herself, and Zelda protected Zelda, allowing Link to face the battle with more confidence. Although the Washan princess accepted this task, she still wanted to be with Link and fight side by side, rather than defending from behind. After all, the Washan princess knew the feeling of fighting alone, but she could not free Link from his sense of responsibility for fighting. Natasha sneezed. The night was cool, and she felt that the grove she chose to stay in was not the right place. It was too humid. She rubbed her red nose and was about to call Hawkeye to ask about their situation. Because she was a little uneasy, she always felt that Tony and the others would have trouble. But Natasha didn't have time to verify her keen premonition. She saw the three princesses at the same time, as if they were electrocuted, stood up, and looked at the direction of the cabin with pale faces. Natasha was also startled. The three princesses seemed to be possessed by evil spirits. She asked hurriedly, "What's wrong? What did you see?" "No." Zelda shook her head. The shock on her face lessened, and she gradually showed a confused smile. She looked in the direction of the cabin. "Link, he seems to have done something big." The Sky Princess twisted her fingers together and jumped under her feet. She was very nervous. She looked at the other two princesses and asked hurriedly, "Really? Really? You felt it too, right?" "I feel." Bang. The ground shook violently, and the Sky Princess body swayed, and she almost fell, but was supported by the bird with its little head in time. "It's gone." Zelda put her hands together, and the expression on her face was like melting, and she shouted happily. There was no awareness that they were hiding. Natasha looked at these young girls, with their hands on their waists, tilted their heads, and raised their left eyebrows, looking at them with a happy look, like Link gave them a wedding ring, and asked, "Girls, can you tell me what's going on? Happy things should be shared." The Washan princess shook her head. She didn't know how to explain it for a while, but the smile appeared on her face and never faded. "We all have the same feeling. It seems that Link killed Ganon." The Sky Princess clapped her hands and took a deep breath of the cold night air. "Yes. Ever since I was injured, I have been hearing Ganon's whispers in my ears. Just now, it suddenly disappeared. Maybe Ganon is really dead." Zelda looked at the Sky Princess in surprise. "Ganon whispers? Why didn't you tell us?" "But if that's the case, Ganon scared me to death." Midona held the sleeping Yaya with one hand and the chattering Pepper with the other hand, and quickly rushed to the three princesses. The speed was too fast, and the sudden brakes fell to the ground. The thick iron crown fell off, and the soft golden red hair was scattered all over the ground. Princess Washan asked hurriedly, "Midona? Link?" Midona stood up hurriedly, and her long hair was automatically tied up. She took the thick iron crown and carefully pressed her hair down, and put it on. Suddenly, she was filled with righteous indignation, shaking Fang and Pepper in her hands and complaining, "It's almost too much. Link is too much. That guy. He caused a huge explosion. He blew a huge hole directly underground. I just flew to the surface of the ground, and before I could stand firmly, the ground banged, flew up. I was shaken into the air, and I saw a big round hole right below me. If I ran a little slower, I would have died in the ground, and I didn't even need to be buried." The Zeldas looked at each other. Natasha asked, "Well, Link caused a huge explosion and killed Ganon. What about him?" Midona spread her hands and blinked her big eyes. "I don't know. Link pulled us to escape, and suddenly Quicksilver fell, so Link had to throw me, Fang and Pepper out, and go back to pick up Quicksilver." "What? He didn't come? Could it be?" Midona's face froze. When Pepper heard what Midona said, he took a deep breath in her hand. Tears were about to fall, and he looked around in confusion. "He's dead." Zelda immediately closed her eyes, tears falling from her eyes. She wanted to calm down, but her tears were out of control, and a sound, as if she was stepping on glass fragments, came from her heart. The Sky Princess sat on the ground, her eyes were dull, and her hands were pulling her hair. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. The Washan Princess bit her lips tightly, her eyes were red, and she was ready to run over to find Link. Seeing the three princesses' big reactions, Midona hurriedly grabbed the Washang princess skirt and shouted, "I'm kidding. Link is fine. Please. It's just a joke. Don't you have a connection with Link like me? You can know that he is not dead by just sensing it a little bit, okay? Joke." The three Zeldas glared at Midona. Princess Washang shook the royal rapier in her hand, wiped her tears in a hurry, and stared at Midona with red eyes. "What a bad joke." Midona smiled cunningly. "It seems that you really love Link. I lied so casually that I deceived you. Link is so lucky." Natasha also breathed a sigh of relief and smiled at the three princesses' violent reactions. The three princesses were a little embarrassed. Princess Sky gathered her hair and rubbed her eyes. Princess Washang hated her own loss of composure, and Zelda was still angry. She grabbed Midona's cheek with both hands and pulled. "You little girl. You actually lied to us. That's too much." Peppa touched his head. He asked stupidly, "So how is the hero now?" Princess Washang asked hurriedly, "Where is Link?" Midona spread her hands and blinked her big eyes. "Link, he is buried in the soil." "What?" "Thank you for the support of Lily Water Bottle 500 starting coins. Thanks to Zyanatang 246 for the support of 100 Kidian coins." Chapter 306 Huge Result. The three princesses hurried through the cold woods and came to the edge of the town. The cracks and rough gullies under their feet became more and more dense. Then everyone stopped moving forward and looked at the scenery in front of them with surprise. The vibration from the grove at that time was not very huge, and when they heard Midona say that the town was blown into a big pit, they were not very strange. But when they came to the vicinity and saw the scene in front of them with their own eyes, they could understand what happened. A pit as big as a basketball hall appeared on the ground. The few small houses that had stood alone in this town were all gone. The underground depth was at least 30 meters, and it was all soil that had been blown into fine particles, just like a desert. Soil, wood, stones, and broken grass were still falling in the air. The explosion just now blew these things into the sky, and now they felt like nuclear dust. Zelda raised her hand, and the bird heard Jarvis' voice. "Okay, princess." It flew into the sky, spread its wings, and spread its body, forming a white shield on one side, covering the heads of the princesses. The Sky Princess leaned forward to look for Link, and suddenly covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Oh no, the soil in the pit is still sinking." Everyone looked at the ground in the pit as the Sky Princess' slender finger pointed. The fine soil covering the bottom of the pit was like the undulating back of a beast, shaking and sinking continuously. The bird suspended in the air uttered the cold voice of Jarvis. "Princesses, according to my observation, the land has dropped from 31 meters below the ground to 36 meters. It is estimated that there are large unfilled underground spaces." The Sky Princess pursed her lips, turned around, and said to the other two princesses, "I'll go down to find Link." Zelda shook her head and frowned slightly. "You can't fly, and the surface of the pit is still sinking. It's not accurate to use the naked eye and sense Link, and the bird has a living detection device. I'd better ride the bird down." Midona sat on Natasha's shoulders, shaking her short legs, and said, "You'd better not go down. Link can hold his breath in the deep sea for at least 6 hours, and this little bit of soil pressure is nothing. On the contrary, if you take the risk to enter the pit, you might anger the loyal wolf." Peppa was in Zelda's arms, fiddling with the small Iron Man suit, and suddenly a rectangular dark red prompt came on the panel. Peppa suddenly shouted, "The hero's dog form." Everyone was puzzled. Asuka had just detected the same living body reaction, and explained Peppa's unconvincing statement. A living body reaction was detected, and a canine life suspected to be Link's wolf was climbing up. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground in the center of the pit trembled, and a wolf's nose stretched out. Then Link, who was black on the upper body and white on the lower body, pulled his tail out of the dense soil with a dusty face. His body shook violently in annoyance, accompanied by strong electric light, flashing and shining, and all the dirt that seeped into his hair was thrown out. Then he sighed deeply. His action just now was still a bit reckless. He misjudged the serious reaction caused by the collision of the three Link's swords. It was almost like releasing a nuclear bomb underground. Once detonated, it would be completely out of control. Link was running and saw Quicksilver falling, almost hitting the shockwave. He knew it was not good. Seeing that the shockwave he created seemed to be too large in order to rescue Quicksilver and others, and to stop the expansion of this attack, Link directly activated bullet time and rushed to Quicksilver. Without thinking, he used a shield counter. Even though Link was as strong as he was now, the skills he relied on most were his bullet time and shield counter. These two skills were enough to benefit him for the rest of his life. The shield counter was shot out smoothly, and the direction of energy was completely reversed. Link directly and completely rebounded the light ball vortex explosion wave with unpredictable consequences. The retracted explosion gathered into a point, which directly caused the distortion of space. In short, the order of the underground space is now a mess. The gathering of high energy also caused the underground material to melt directly at high temperature, forming a large magma pool, replacing the blood pool originally created by the Yagay team. Those lazy Yagay team ninjas may not be able to escape the aftermath of this earth-shaking event. Even so, the power of the explosion blew the surface materials into the sky, and the collapsed soil buried Link and others. Princess Washang held her hands to her mouth, and her light voice penetrated the night and the mist formed by fine powder. "Link, are you okay?" Link also let out a long howl, to show that he was fine. Even though Link had regained the ability to speak, he didn't have much desire to speak, and was more silent than before. The princesses and Natasha all breathed a sigh of relief, and Natasha looked at the mess around her, including the dead residents, and was afraid that she would be criticized by the government again. Peppa said oh, and flew over in a hurry, hugged Link's face, and shouted happily, "Brave man, you are okay. That's great. Cough cough cough, it's choking." Then Peppa closed his mask excitedly, and shouted the previous words happily again. Link changed into a human form, hugged Peppa, and smiled slightly. But his mood was unexpectedly low. He had previously tried to transmit the attack directly through Ganon's phantom to directly kill Ganon's body, but it failed. Link directly turned part of Ganon's soul power and curse into the basic particles of the world's matter, which also caused Ganon, who had not yet awakened, to suffer severe damage. This was the first time that Link directly transmitted his attack to Ganon, which had a great impact on that distant and zero-distance existence. This was Link's most powerful counterattack so far. The results were quite fruitful. Even 5 certificates of bravery and 4 certificates of order exploded, greatly replenishing the power of the Holy Triangle, and Link's strength doubled again. Even the Master Sword had 3 more stars, and its power increased sharply. But Ganon was not dead, it just slowed down the time for Ganon to accumulate strength. This made Link feel a little heavy. His current strength was still not enough to face Ganon directly. What's more, what made Link even more frightened was that even if he had such a great record, it was far more than the total damage to Ganon in the previous battles. Goddess Hylia seemed to be in a coma, without any response. She was like dead. It had been a long time since the last time he communicated with Goddess Hylia. What happened to Goddess Hylia? Link felt helpless. No matter how strong the enemy was, Link was not afraid. He could fight the whole world with a sword. But how could he solve this mysterious accident? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 307 Goddess Statue. Link used Mistidin to pull Loki, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch out of the dirt. The 3 of them knelt on the ground and spat dirt. Loki panted and raised his head, looking at the nuclear explosion-like scene around him, and looked at Link in shock. "What did you do?" And Peppa, as if he had defeated Ganon himself, hugged his arms, and raised his head, laughing. "Awesome." The bottom of the pit was still sinking, and Link hurriedly pulled the 3 people, and flew to the surface. He hurriedly winked at Midona, and Midona hurriedly raised her hand. "Everyone, get out of here quickly, this place is going to collapse." So Midona lay on the bird, and flew in front. Link and the 3 princesses held hands and ran. Peppa flew in the sky, holding the still sleeping Yaya in his hand. Natasha pulled the Scarlet Witch, while Loki carried Quicksilver, who was injured in his hands and feet, with an unhappy look on his face, and dragged at the back. Quicksilver looked at the soil behind him collapsing rapidly, and his face turned pale with fear. He hurriedly urged Loki, hurry up, hurry up. Loki said angrily, I'll throw you down, so I'll be faster. Quicksilver smiled awkwardly, then go slower. Everyone hurriedly fled, and came to the bottom of the plane. Loki and Quicksilver sat on the ground and panted violently. Natasha skillfully took out 2 hand restraints from the plane that had been used on Loki before, and buckled Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Zelda walked in front of the brother and sister, put her hands on her hips, and glared at them. Do you know you are wrong now? The brother and sister nodded silently. The brother and sister are now calm. When they first met Zelda, Zelda looked the same age as them, and was also a little girl. Now the brother and sister are adults, but Zelda still looks like a little girl. Despite this, they were greatly stimulated today. They didn't expect that Lord Kage would be like that, and they didn't expect that they would join the camp of a big villain. Zelda was scolding the brother and sister. After asking Link, the Washan princess sighed. They had thought that Link had killed Ganon, but he was only injured. But this was not bad. This proved that the Washan princess had also experienced a lot. She knew that defeating Ganon was a long process. The Sky Princess brought a towel and helped Link wipe the sweat off his head. She felt that Link was a little depressed, so she asked, what's wrong? What happened? Link said in a hoarse voice, how long have you not heard the voice of Goddess Hylia? The Sky Princess was stunned and looked at the Washan Princess. Link continued, Goddess Hylia, it seems that something has happened. Both princesses were shocked, and everyone suddenly quieted down. At this time, Zelda scolded Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver severely. She came over, heard what Link said, squatted down, and touched Link's head. Zelda whispered, Link, how many times have you prayed to Goddess Hylia? Link was stunned. Unlike other princesses, Link had never formally prayed to Goddess Hylia even once. Although he was the most favored warrior of Goddess Hylia. Zelda continued, as for me, I have prayed at least more than 10,000 times. You know my experience. I prayed 10,000 times, but Goddess Hylia never responded to me, not even once. She sat next to Link, so for me, during that time, I didn't believe in the existence of Goddess Hylia. I thought it was just an imaginary story. Her bright eyes looked at Link's profile. You are the most loved person by Goddess Hylia. I guess you are at a loss when you suddenly lose the news of the goddess. However, you have come all the way, not because of the blessing of the goddess, but because of your courage. I don't know what happened to Goddess Hylia, but I believe that you who are favored by Goddess Hylia can do something. Link nodded. He has experienced many things and faced many problems. If he is a person with poor psychological quality, he may collapse under heavy pressure. One of the factors that allow Link to shoulder heavy responsibilities and turn heavy burdens into motivation is that he can take it up and put it down. Saving the world and defeating the Demon King Ganon. They are all composed of events. For Link, what he faces is a process of solving problems one by one. Link is a person who lives in the present. Since Goddess Hylia suddenly disappeared, it is useless to worry too much. Link is a man of action, not looking ahead or behind. Since there is a problem, what needs to be done is not to be wrapped in negative emotions, but to try to act in the right direction. By the way, I really seem to have never prayed to Goddess Hylia seriously even once. And this Marvel world, this Earth. Link stood up and ran towards the big pit. Zelda and others were puzzled, while Natasha was watching Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. She did not realize how bad it was to not hear the voice of Goddess Hylia. Soon, Link ran over holding a big stone. Loki's mouth twitched because the stone was too big, with a diameter of 2 meters, and Link's body seemed too thin. It was shaking, and it always felt that the big stone would crush Link. But Link's ability to lift things is indeed superb. Although the stone was shaking, Link's hands were too small, which was equivalent to using 2 toothpicks to lift an egg. But Link never let the stone fall. He ran over and slammed it on the ground. Scarlet Witch asked in horror, you are not going to punish us with this big stone, are you? Midona rubbed her face, shook her cuffs and asked, Link, if you want to practice weightlifting, this small stone is not enough. You have to lift at least 2 hulks. Link did not answer, took out the Master Sword. The sword flashed and slashed at the stone. The Washan Princess seemed to understand what Link meant. The stone peeled off piece by piece, and Link's blade was like cutting on jelly, and he was as focused as fighting. Thinking of her appearance in his mind, the stone quickly formed a vague outline. Link's craftsmanship was not very good, so every time he took down the sword, he had to be careful and focused. Gradually, a life-size statue of a woman appeared in front of Link. She had 2 wings, folded her hands, and wore a robe and a hood. Statues of the goddess Hylia are all over the Hyrule continent. There are statues of the goddess Hylia in all areas where people live. And now, the first statue of goddess Hylia appeared on Earth. This cold and soft-spoken female deity finally had her own form in the Marvel world. All the details were blurry, except for her face, which was clear and distinct. Link didn't know what goddess Hylia looked like. He carved it carefully, and the face of goddess Hylia looked a bit like Zelda. Chapter 308 Link is praying. The stone statue of goddess Hylia stood in front of Link. Pepper, who was far away, picked some flowers and plants during this time, folded them into a wreath, flew over, put down his 2 little hands, and the wreath fell on the head of the statue of goddess Hylia. Just when Pepper put down the wreath, Pepper's eyes seemed to see that the statue of goddess Hylia suddenly glowed slightly. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if it was an illusion. Loki smiled at the stone statue of goddess Hylia, and said with a smile, "Link, you are very good at making handicrafts. If you give this statue to my brother, he will be so happy." At this time, Zelda's mobile phone suddenly beeped, and when she answered it, she heard Tona's panting and embarrassed voice. "Ahem, Zelda, good evening. I'll look for Link." Link took the phone. Tony was a little embarrassed and told Link about the counterattack and escape of Orc and the Mind Gem Scepter. But after hearing it, Link just hummed lightly. Tony asked hurriedly, "Aren't you surprised at all that such a big thing happened?" Midona answered for Link, "Don't you think we have experienced a lot of big things? I'll hang up first. Link has things to do." Natasha crossed her arms and tilted her head, her straight red hair hanging to one side, and asked, "What happened to Tony?" Midona said calmly, "Nothing. It's just that the global armed defense system created by Tony has rebelled. They changed their minds and planned to destroy humans." Natasha, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were horrified. Loki had a somewhat amused expression. Tony's robot army was originally intended to deal with an army similar to the Chitauri, but I didn't expect this to happen. Natasha hurriedly said, "Link, let's go back and make a plan." But Link shook his head. Ultron's accident was indeed serious, but it was far less terrifying than the inability to communicate with the goddess Hylia. If the goddess really had an accident, it might have extremely bad consequences. Link's mood was stable, and everyone else calmed down. Link stood in front of the statue of goddess Hylia, closed his eyes, and began to pray silently. This was almost the first time in his life that he prayed to the god so seriously and attentively. The 3 princesses also stood behind Link and prayed silently together. Midona also transformed into a more formal adult and prayed in the same way as Princess Washang. Pepper also landed at Link's feet, mumbling something. Natasha and others looked at Link. As for Loki, he suddenly felt a strange feeling in his heart and watched what Link and the others did with interest. "I pray to hear your voice, beg for your protection, and may the light stay in the hearts of the people forever." The 3 princesses said the same sentence in their hearts at the same time. But Link only said a few words. He kept repeating, "Goddess Hylia, what can I do for you? Goddess Hylia, what can I do for you? Goddess Hylia, what can I do for you?" Link had been blessed by goddess Hylia, and he could communicate with her without praying. He repeated his inner voice over and over again, throwing away the influence of external things, wanting to hear the somewhat indifferent voice of goddess Hylia again. Natasha didn't understand. Looking at Loki's unfathomable expression, she asked, "Hey, do you see anything?" Loki raised his chin with a smile on his face. He pointed at the empty air and said, "Sense of existence." Natasha pursed her beautiful lips. "Just a few words pretending to be profound will only make you look stupid." Loki stood up, spread his hands, and said with a smile, "I'm a god respected by you earthlings. Naturally, I know the effect of this kind of prayer. Do you think God exists? Natasha, aren't you?" Loki shook his head, then put it another way. "Do you think goddess Hylia exists in this universe?" Natasha was silent for a while. "I'm not even sure whether goddess Hylia exists." Loki smiled. That's right. They are praying, injecting their sense of identity with Goddess Hylia into the stone statue in front of them. Let Goddess Hylia really exist in this world. Do you understand? Just as Loki was explaining, suddenly, the stone statue changed. Natasha was shocked, and her body tensed. At the first moment, a colorful light shone, which seemed to be there and not there. But this made the stone statue in the dark clearer, and the facial features also had traces of light and dark. The next moment, Quicksilver, Natasha and the others heard the faint voice of a strange woman at the same time. It was just a faint hum, but it calmed everyone down. Natasha was shocked. Impossible. The stone was just an ordinary underground rock. When Link moved it, it was still dirty with wet soil and moss. Link also carved the outline himself, and it was not a naturally formed statue. The ordinary stone statue actually had a wonderful reaction under the prayers of Link and the others. While Link and Zelda were praying, their faces were pale. Link, who was so bold, actually had his shoulders trembling slightly. Loki was speechless. What happened to them? Didn't they fail to summon the goddess and summon a devil instead? Scarlet Witch screamed. Ah, her face horrified. Are there devils in this world? Loki and Natasha stared at Scarlet Witch fiercely. Then tell me who you and your sister had taken refuge with before. Quicksilver said angrily. Why are you so mean to my sister? If you have anything to say, come to me. Loki and Natasha's eyes shifted to Quicksilver. Quicksilver's face froze, and he forced a smile. Everyone should be kind to others. As for Link and Zelda, why were they so terrified? They were bathed in the colorful light spread by the goddess statue. In the world with their eyes closed, their bodies quickly enlarged and enlarged, almost to the point of breaking the Marvel universe. They suddenly appeared in a desolate world full of lonely, decadent, empty, decayed warriors and weapons. There was a strong wind blowing everywhere. This was a dead world. It was unclear what kind of world-destroying disaster had occurred. Link and the others looked at each other and found themselves in a small golden light shield. Strong winds and dust attacked the golden light shield from the outside, hitting it with bangs, and it seemed to be about to break at any time. In front of them was a huge cross, and a huge female corpse was deeply nailed to the cross, with her head hanging down, and her hair covering her face. But even so, Link, Zelda and the others recognized who the female corpse was at a glance. It was the goddess Hylia. Chapter 309, Soul Remnant. While Link and the others were praying, in a secret room, Ancient One suddenly woke up from meditation, opened his mouth dumbly, but said nothing. Their souls seemed to be connected to a higher world. Ancient One thought in her heart. She is a sage, and in the eyes of others, she is the embodiment of wisdom and truth. This is indeed the case. After all, Ancient One is the person closest to destiny on Earth. But she still can't see what happened to Link, Zelda and others. Because Link and the others are now connected to a more complex and grander higher world. If the world is compared to a building, the Marvel world is a stone brick, and the world that Link and the others are in contact with is a church made up of countless buildings. What are you doing? You will die. Ancient One frowned. The lives and souls of the lower world cannot touch the higher world at all. Their souls will be torn apart by the order that cannot be understood by the laws of the lower world and become a state of nothingness where even elementary particles do not exist. Both worlds completely erase their existence. But Ancient One did not dare to act rashly. She didn't know what the consequences would be if she did this and could only let Link and Zelda destroy themselves. These children. Ancient One closed her eyes again. She had sensed Link's presence since he came through. But she ignored him and just observed quietly. After all, there were too many strange things happening in this universe. Link was not the first timer to visit this universe, nor would he be the last. She knew that Link had his own mission, which was to eliminate the dark power that was latent in the world. Ancient One observed quietly in every war. But she didn't take any action, because it didn't conform to her rules of conduct. But she decided to find a chance to meet Link. After all, today's mutation was too strange. Of course. At least Link and Zelda could survive this mutation. On Link's side, seeing that the goddess Hylia was dead and nailed to the cross, this scene was hard to accept. Link gritted his teeth. I'll fly up and take a look. Be careful. So he rushed out of the golden light shield, but just as his head stretched out, Princess Washang's body seemed to be electrocuted, and she reached out absent-mindedly and pulled Link back. Link fell into her arms and turned to look at her in confusion. Princess Washang was still in shock. "It's very strange outside. Look at your hair." Link touched the golden hair on his forehead, as if it had been deleted, with a section missing. He rubbed his head hurriedly, took out the Master Sword, and stretched it out to test it. But looking at the strong wind outside, and the sand that kept hitting the golden light shield, Link was afraid that his beloved sword would be shattered. So he summoned a piece of hard ice. Link's eyes were focused on the ice, and with a bang, several small golden chains entangled the ice. Link applied the time stop skill to the ice. During the short time stop skill effect, the ice was indestructible, and Ganon's full strength attack could not stop it. But after the effect came into contact, the explosion and collapse would still take place. Link threw the ice in his hand that used the time stop skill out of the light shield, only to see, bang, it disappeared. Link was stunned. No, it didn't disappear. Instead, as soon as it came into contact with the external space, it was torn apart by the violent energy outside, including the energy applied by the time stop skill. It was crushed in an instant. Nothing was left. Link felt his chest was empty, and his time stop skill could not be used temporarily. The Sky Princess looked at the strong wind outside, grabbed Link's arm, and said, "Don't be impulsive." Link shook his head. His eyes kept looking at the lowered head of the goddess Hylia in the sky, trying to see the expression of the goddess Hylia from the dirty long hair hanging down. Even the ice protected by the time stop skill disintegrated when it was exposed in an instant, which meant that Link could not survive even a second in the chaotic and violent illusion outside. A small piece of sand hit the golden light shield. It was too small, less than 1 millimeter. But Link knew that the power of the sand at this moment was even enough to kill Ganon. Then cracks appeared on the surface of the golden light shield. Everyone's face turned pale. Zelda looked at the huge body of Goddess Hylia, bit her lip, and said, "We must leave here quickly, otherwise the light shield will be completely broken, and our bodies will be annihilated in this world." Midona looked around, and smelled a strong smell of gunpowder in her nose. She said, "Since we suddenly came here, there must be a task entrusted to us by Goddess Hylia. It's not good to leave like this, right?" Link looked left and right, looking at this desolate world. Is this the world where Goddess Hylia lives? Zelda closed her eyes and searched this world with her extraordinary sense. She opened her eyes and looked at the other two Zeldas. The three of them had mysterious senses and reached out their hands at the same time without thinking. 3 white little hands were held together. In the center of the light shield, a bright door flashed. Zelda took a deep breath. Sure enough, through the power of prayer, this door was opened. Link was a little irritated. Wait. He prayed to Goddess Hylia and asked what he could do to help Goddess Hylia. As a result, Hylia summoned him to her world. Is it just to let Link take a look at the world where Hylia lived and the miserable corpse of Hylia? Link knew that leaving like this would be a decision he would regret for the rest of his life. He had to do something. At this moment, Link had been staring at the head of Hylia, and suddenly a crystal clear thing with colorful light fell from the hair of Hylia. Link took a breath. He couldn't restrain himself, and didn't care how terrible the environment outside was. He opened his wings, and rushed out without hesitation. He didn't see that when he rushed out of the shield, the expressions of the 3 Zelda souls became the same, as if their bodies were temporarily usurped by some kind of soul, and their eyes flashed with colorful light. Link rushed out with all his strength, and was faced with a violent airflow. Even if there were 10,000 Links, they would be torn into nothingness in less than a second. And he pressed his right hand tightly on his chest, and the light of the holy triangle suddenly spread, and spread all over his body. A layer of weak golden light was released, covering Link's body. It was faint and dim, but it helped Link block the violent impact of the external environment. The colorful crystal clear object from the height fell quickly. Link suddenly flew over and held it in his arms. It was a tear-shaped transparent gem, flowing with a faint 7-color light. At this time, Link clearly felt the message coming from the transparent gem. This gem was the last remnant of the dying soul of the goddess Hylia. Chapter 310 Link, the tail is broken. In the strong wind, Link's fingertips touched the teardrop gemstone. The smooth and warm surface transmitted a large number of image fragments to Link, making his head numb and almost comatose. On the Day of Judgment, the sun shattered in the sky. The world fell into chaos, and crazy people fought each other. People frantically grabbed the saint, tore off her wings, and nailed her to the cross, trying to sacrifice her to obtain the rebirth of the sun. But it was hopeless. The world died in despair. The saint witnessed everything, and her dying eyes gradually became turbid and dim. The last tear of sadness condensed from her eye socket. It contained blood and sad memories. It also contained the broken soul of the saint. The soul in this tear bloomed the last arc of light. In the arc of light, miniature worlds bloomed one by one, including Hyrule, including Marvel, including the worlds where other princesses are. Thousands of years of eternal time were actually born from the last arc of light of this teardrop. Link, Zelda, Madonna, and countless creatures in countless worlds in this tear. In fact, the teardrop in Link's hand is a world he lives in. In the teardrop, the last remnant of Goddess Hylia's soul gradually dissipated. Countless worlds in the teardrop were also in a dying state, and the ominous and dirty power formed Ganon's will. Link's actions and countless reincarnations of battles were all fighting against this dying world's will. Link, come back soon. Link suddenly woke up, and the colorful light in his eyes faded. He saw that the light of his own holy triangle power had dimmed to the point where it was almost unnoticeable under the attack of the storm. The huge Goddess Hylia in front of him was already a rotten corpse, and the last will of Goddess Hylia was hidden in this teardrop gem. Link had already got the teardrop gem, so he turned his body and flew quickly towards the light shield where Zelda and the others were. The golden light shield was also covered with cracks, but no one left Link and ran away. He flapped his wings and accelerated rapidly, and his hair tore his scalp and blew straight behind his head. Link desperately hugged the teardrop gem in his arms and accelerated to the maximum. Kuacha, just as he was about to crash into the golden light shield, the power of the Holy Triangle was shattered by the storm outside, and the Holy Triangle light on Link's chest fell into silence. At this time, he had just put his wrist into the light shield. In the next second, Link would be smashed into nothingness by the storm outside. Princess Washang and Madonna reached forward at the same time, grabbed one of Link's hands, and pulled it hard. No! Madonna exclaimed. Even if they helped Link and pulled him in a little, Link still had at least half of his body outside the light shield. In the next second, Link would be cut in half and his lower body disappeared. Princess Zelda closed her eyes in fear. Ah! Link screamed. His body crashed into the arms of the two princesses. Link. The four princesses rushed over. Link with half of his body. Could this hero only be able to dance with swords in a wheelchair in the future? The princesses could not accept this. But they were suddenly stunned, and Madonna looked at Link in her arms dumbly. Shadow Wolf screamed in pain. Princess Washang exclaimed, "Your body is fine." It turned out that Link transformed his body at the last moment, and turned into the form of Shadow Wolf. His body was shortened, so that half of his body was not destroyed by the storm outside. Ugh! Link cried out in frustration. Princess Sky hugged Link, stroked his hair, and asked with concern, "Link, what's wrong with you?" Link Wolf looked back dejectedly, and raised his long tail. He did not escape unscathed. His beautiful tail was still snatched by the storm. Princess Washang looked strange and smiled. Tail. Zelda smiled with her hands covering her mouth, touched Link's ears, and comforted him softly. "It's okay. It's just a piece of tail is missing. It's not a problem." But Link was still very unhappy. At this time, a light blue flame floated out of the hair on his back. Mipha flew out and said softly, "Link, I seem to feel that you are injured." "Wow. It looks like a little wolf." Mipha couldn't help but join in petting Link. Link raised his eyes and looked at Mipha eagerly. Mipha smiled and said softly, okay, I can help you fix it." She pressed her body against the wolf's back, and her body became a little more ethereal. In the sound of the light energy movement, Link's tail was wrapped in a light blue light, like a bud, and half of the black wolf tail with smooth hair extended out. Link was so excited that he couldn't help but lick Mipha's face with his tongue, making Mipha giggle. But when Link found that his new tail was shaking quickly like a dog, and the other princesses looked at him with smiles, he suddenly felt embarrassed and rolled his body and turned into a human form again. Mipha smiled, but looked at the situation outside the light shield with concern, and asked, "What world is this? Why is your body state more ethereal than a ghost?" Link touched the teardrop gem, and knew what happened in this world. So he told the princesses about it regardless of his taciturn personality. Zelda frowned. The world we live in, whether it is Zelda's world or Zelda's world, is contained in this teardrop. She stared at the teardrop gem. In other words, our current state is actually the soul on the earth, magnified countless times. Even one of our cells is countless times larger than the universe, so that the soul is too thin and can't even exist in this world for even a second. It must be stabilized by this light shield. Midona had become smaller again at this moment. Looking at the cracked light shield, she said with some fear, "We should leave. The light seems to be broken." Mipha hurriedly said, "Then you should leave quickly." Then her body shook, and the virtual disappeared, and she went back into Link's body. Princess Washang and Princess Sky went in separately. Zelda was a little hesitant, looking at the eye jewel in Link's arms, and said, "Link, you go first." Link was puzzled, but nodded and rushed to the light door. Bang! Link hit the light door hard and couldn't enter. Midona exclaimed, "How is it possible? The light door is expired? The quality is so poor." Zelda said, "Link, try it." Link stretched out his hand and touched the light door. That was like a wall just now, but he successfully put his hand in. Zelda looked at the eyeball gem in Link's arms and said, "It's not that we can't enter the light gate. It's that this eyeball gem, which is a substance that exists in this big world, can't enter the world that belongs to us." She looked at Link and said seriously, "I've said before that our world is merely the remnant of the last soul in this teardrop. It is countless times smaller than the most basic material particles in this dead world. It's like it's impossible to stuff an apple into a piece of paper." To use Tony's words, higher dimensional creatures cannot enter lower dimensional worlds. We can't take the last existence of Goddess Hylia away. Zelda was a little breathless when she said this. Well, a brief introduction is that the last soul arc reflected in the tears of the dying Goddess Hylia formed countless worlds including Link and Iron Man. As the arc gradually disappeared, countless worlds rotted like an apple and gradually fell into darkness. This is the real enemy that Link has to deal with, the death will of the world, the rotten part of the apple. This plot is a bit risky. I don't know what you readers think of this plot, so it basically ends here. The main story is still the adventure of Link and the Marvel Heroes part villains. Thank you for your support. Chapter 311 The whispering voice resounds again. Midona looked at the golden light shield that was about to break, lowered her head to look at the teardrop gem in Link's arms, and said, "Can't you take this big gem with you?" Zelda didn't know why, but her expression was very sad. Even she herself felt strange. She rubbed her eye sockets and said, "There's no time. Put down the gem and leave." Link shook his head, not knowing what he was thinking. At this time, the sound of the golden light shield breaking came from all around. He suddenly raised his head and grabbed Zelda's shoulders. "Link, what are you going to do?" Zelda looked at him with big eyes, and Link's face was very tangled. He leaned close to her face, and his eyes magnified in Zelda's vision. Link hugged Zelda gently. Then he pushed her into the light gate. Zelda didn't even have time to say no. Seeing Link looking at her, Midona hurriedly shook her head. "I won't leave you here alone." She saw Link's shoulder move, and was about to dodge. But Link was very fast and immediately grabbed her arm. Midona flashed and turned into a graceful adult again. Midona's eyes were filled with anger, and she tried to break free from Link's hand. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "Let me go, Link. You can't always think about dealing with the problem by yourself. You pushed us into the light gate, and you stayed alone to solve the problem. Don't be silly, let's go together." She grabbed Link's wrist with her backhand, stared at Link and smiled. "I will hold you tightly, and if you catch me and enter the light gate, I will try my best to pull you back to Earth. Don't laugh and shake me off." But Midona saw Link's apologetic smile, and suddenly she felt a pain behind her neck, and her eyes were covered by a layer of black curtain, as if the computer had crashed. Midona was knocked unconscious by Link. Link broke free from Midona's hand, hugged her, turned over to look at her slightly red and swollen neck, and immediately realized that he had used too much force. After Midona wakes up, I'm afraid her neck will hurt for a while. Link is now worried about how to comfort Midona in the future. When he sent Midona into the light gate, he was still listening to Midona muttering, "No, you can't. Even if you leave us behind, you can't leave me for them." He was stunned. Of course. He has 4 souls in his body, and this life is not just his. To die heroically is also a selfish thing for him. Looking at the teardrop gem in his hand, he fell into deep thought. The sound of the golden light shield breaking around him became more and more creepy and dense. There is not much time left. It seems that after Link caught the falling teardrop gem, the surrounding storm has become more intense. It seems to be drowning itself. This world is completely over. In his hand is the last proof of the existence of Goddess Hylia. Link must protect her no matter what. But he looked up at the dead body of Goddess Hylia. Even if it was all wind and sand barriers, Link could still feel the decayed smell coming from the goddess body. The limbs and abdomen were nailed to the cross. A long bloody hole was cut open in the abdomen, making the lower body dress dirty. He had never seen the true face of Goddess Hylia, but the face of the corpse covered by hair was probably extremely hideous. Goddess Hylia was the last life in this world, and even microorganisms disappeared. But this avoided the last embarrassment of Goddess Hylia, being eroded by bacteria and insects. In fact, Goddess Hylia was already dead. This was just a gem made from the goddess tears, not Goddess Hylia herself, but just a faint tear gem that could dissipate at any time, and was already polluted inside. Link looked at the light door in front of him. As long as he took a step forward, he would be safe. But he was reluctant to act. Pop. The golden light shield that protected him collapsed with a bang, shattered and disappeared, and the surroundings dimmed. When he saw the storm sweeping Link away and tearing him away, in Link's heart, he suddenly heard the murmur of Goddess Hylia, "Complete the trial of the brave man." She couldn't even finish her words, but Link already knew the reward from the goddess. The power of the clone was strengthened. Link's eyebrows stood up, and his body was torn apart. With a sound of tearing, 3 Link clones appeared. Holding the teardrop gem, they leaned against the light gate. The 3 Link clones surrounded Link in a semicircle, raised the Hylian shield, and faced the sweeping wind, swung it backhand, and hit the shield counter. Boom. The sounds overlapped, but the 3 shields exploded in an instant, and then the 3 Link bodies disappeared in an instant. The 3 clones exploded, causing Link amazing damage. Link immediately spurted out a mouthful of blood, which sprinkled on the teardrop gem in his arms. He had just hit 3 perfect shield counters against the first wave of approaching storms. In this world, even a nearly unstoppable shield counter is no longer magical. But Link, holding the teardrop gem in his right hand and the Hylian shield in his left hand, swung out a shield counter. Boom. The 4th perfect shield counter. Snap. Link's beloved Hylian shield exploded. Link felt a sharp pain in his wrist, and then the pain disappeared. His left hand had disappeared, and was spreading rapidly to his elbow. At this moment, the teardrop gem burst into a burst of strong light, and then changed from a hard crystal to a pool of water. A colorful glimmer flashed and melted into Link's body. He heard the gentle voice of the goddess Hylia. "Thank you for your selfless dedication, my child. Heroes never die, they will live in legends. Gods will not die either." The colorful glimmer spread from the chest to the arm, filling Link's broken arm, forming a transparent left hand, filled with flesh and blood, and a golden double wing pattern on the wrist. Link seemed to be pushed by someone, and entered the light gate. On Earth, Link opened his eyes. He saw Zelda and the others looking at him with concern. Midona also looked like she was about to cry. When she saw Link open his eyes, she was happy at first, then she puffed up her face and glared at Link, running over and yelling, "You!" She ran right into Link's arms, knocking him to the ground. Her 2 little hands tore at Link's mouth, and Midona angrily said, "You stinky boy, you actually knocked me out and threw me out in such an undignified way. Zelda and the others are princesses, but I'm not." Link smiled apologetically. Zelda and the others were relieved. Midona looked at Link steadily, her chest rising and falling, and asked in confusion, "Where is the tear gem?" Zelda and the others were also very curious. Link shook his head and said sadly, "In the end, I managed to keep the tear gem. It suddenly turned into a pool of water and disappeared from my body." "Into my body?" Midona looked confused, then her face turned angry again, showing her fangs, and staring at Link. shouting, "You idiot, you didn't eat the tear gem," and brought it back. But Link was stunned and said, "That's the way." Midona looked at him in horror. At this time, Quicksilver's strange voice came. "This, Link, come and see. The stone statue you carved seems to have become very valuable." The goddess Hylia was born in the real world by dimensional reduction. The idea comes from a small Easter egg in Breath of the Wild. Nintendo set up an NPC in Hyrule Continent who looks like the late Nintendo CEO Satoru Iwata, so that the tired president can always protect his beloved Hyrule Continent in another form. Chapter 312 Drained by the Goddess. The rough stone statue was glowing, and there was a faint buzzing sound around it, more like a moan that was stretched out dozens of times. Everyone felt empty in their hearts. Link stood up and looked at the stone statue. His heart suddenly beat wildly, as hot as an unstable engine. Before he could react to what was happening, the energy in his body suddenly became chaotic and uncontrollable, and severe pain spread throughout the province. His shoulders shrank, and there was a cry of surprise from the people around him. A layer of blood had already seeped out of Link's skin. Link waved his hands hurriedly to show that he was fine. If there was any problem with his body, Mipha would definitely rush out to treat him as soon as possible. He just hurt a lot, as if an organ in his body wanted to run away from home, pulling at his inner cavity. At this time, Yea, who was lying in Midona's arms, stretched lazily, and the fine and bright red dragon scales on his body rose and fell, like ripples on wheat ears blown by the wind. Yea looked up in a daze with a lazy and charming look, waiting with a smile, and saw Link at first sight after waking up. As a result, it was a strange girl with green skin. "This woman is so scary." Yea's body stiffened. Link. He felt the movement from Yea. Midona gently touched Yea's head, but Yea pretended to bite her. When he lowered his head, he saw Yea's eyes were angry and a little terrified, as if he didn't know her. He tried hard to break free. Midona lowered her head and scolded, "Be quiet, are you mistaken? You still don't recognize my adult appearance? I'm Midona?" Yea then let go of Midona's thumb and turned to look at Link. He cried twice, blinked his eyes, and looked up at Midona in confusion, his expression asking her, "What happened? Why is Link covered in blood again? Did I miss something?" Midona smiled. "You missed a lot of things, Link. Did you have a stomachache?" Link stretched out his hand to stop others from approaching, and forced a smile to Yea, who woke up from his sleepiness. This child, even the big explosion at that time woke her up. What a great sleep ability. Zelda and others didn't know what happened to Link. Link's body has been abnormal for a long time. His skin color has changed before. Link stood there as still as possible, trying to control the violent energy in his body. He looked at the glowing stone statue. Could it be that the stone statue was pulling something in my body? Suddenly, there was a tearing pain. Link felt as if he was being torn apart by the power in his body, like a hand tearing flesh. Link's body suddenly shook, and a large cloud of blood mist burst out of his body, steaming into the sky, a light red piece, like fireworks. After the blood mist flew out of his body, Link's eyes went black, and he almost fainted. The power in his body seemed to be drained away by this blood. Link saw that the 2 rows of hearts in the upper left corner of his vision quickly turned into phantoms, and finally only 3 real hearts were left. Link knew his current physical condition has regressed to the time when he first came to the Marvel world. At that time, he had nothing left except a pair of shorts, and he didn't even have a hair tie. But the Void said that this regression was only temporary. These abilities will be restored sooner or later, and after the Void's heart, a small row of Void hearts were added. So, this physical change is not a bad thing. Link knew that once the power in his body was restored, his strength would reach a whole new level. The energy container, the source of Link's power, also increased. Link counted and added all the hearts of the Void in the reel. At present, he has a total of 40 life containers and 30 energy containers, and the energy is terrifying. Although Link still looks like a delicate little girl, in fact, the power in his body is already very terrifying and scary. Link felt that he could throw down the Master Sword and use his fists to kill all current opponents in seconds. There is no need to mention the physical strength. Link looked at the blood mist in the sky, which contained all of Link's current energy, and almost made Link unable to stand up. He looked down at the double wing pattern on his left wrist. His eyes were gradually replaced by expectation. Could it be the goddess Hylia? The atmosphere around became solemn and serious, as if some kind of transcendent power made everyone's hearts calm and unshakable. And this familiar feeling did come from the goddess Hylia. In the blood mist, Link caught a little glimmer of light, a colorful glimmer, although weak, but it did exist. Just as the name of the goddess Hylia rang in his mind, the blood mist also condensed into a shape, a winged girl, vaguely flying towards the stone statue. A flash of light merged into it. The light of the stone statue became brighter and brighter. Zelda came over and hurriedly supported Link. She felt Link's trembling in her hand and asked hurriedly, "Your body?" Link shook his head, indicating that he was just exhausted. Princess Washang stared at the stone statue and whispered, "Is the stone statue falling off?" The face of the Sky Princess was full of expectant joy. Goddess Hylia may not be dead. Loki stared at the stone statue. This stone statue is just an ordinary stone, carved by Link in an ordinary way, and placed there in an ordinary way. Then, this ordinary work of art made Loki feel a wave that was even higher than that of his father Odin. In the stone statue, a life that was difficult to describe in words was condensing and forming. Midona came over with Fang in her arms. Fang stretched out her hand coquettishly. Knowing that Link was now weak, she climbed onto Link like a snake and circled around his neck. This weird shape that seemed to strangle Link was Fang's favorite way of hanging. Lowering her head, Midona whispered to Link and Zelda, "Link is really something. But, be careful. This kind of abnormal movement may attract Ganon." Link was alert. And just after Midona reminded Link, not even 10 seconds later, a wailing sound came from the sky. Even the increasingly bright light of the stone statue was shaken for a moment. Everyone looked up suddenly. Then he saw the moon and the night sky, and at some point, it had grown a hideous face full of holes, staring at the creatures on the earth. Link was startled. 4 meteors fell from the hideous moon and crashed towards Link. Princess Washang's eyes shone, and she immediately drew her sword and shouted, "It's Ganon's minions." She looked back at Link and then said solemnly to Midona, "Midona, you protect Link." Everyone could see that Link was in poor physical condition. In this crisis, Princess Washang, who had fought in the battlefield before, stood up. Chapter 313 The Golden Troops are attacking. Link's ears also heard the weak voice of the Hylia goddess. "I am very weak now. Please help me resist this attack." "No shirk." The goddess voice appeared again, giving Link great motivation. A wisp of erratic colorful light appeared in the stone statue and merged into Link's chest. A peaceful energy melted into Link's body. The power was very weak, just enough to let Link regain his energy. He only had 3 hearts of life now. In Link's hand, the Ice Maker skill was activated, and the cold air condensed. An Ice Hylia shield appeared in his hand. Zelda looked at Link in surprise. "What are you going to do?" Link nodded. Although his strength has temporarily declined significantly, he only has the most basic physical strength and energy. But as long as he has a shield in his hand, even a demon can beat you. 4 meteors landed on the ground, not far away. Because the ground was blown out by Link, the 3 meteors fell to the ground, directly causing the ground to collapse and dust to fill the sky. Princess Washang's feet were still trembling. Loki also drew out his blade and said with a wicked smile, "I haven't fought for a long time. Let me warm up too." Scarlet Witch felt bad and hurriedly shouted, "Untie my restraints quickly, so I can fight too." Midona shouted, "No need." Link came over with an ice shield and a master sword. He looked at Midona, who nodded, "Okay. I'll go and take care of the goddess statue." Princess Washang looked at Link with concern. "Is it really okay? I feel that your strength has declined a lot all of a sudden, and it seems that you are not even as good as Loki." Loki frowned fiercely. "What do you mean? How come I'm a unit of measurement with a very shameful meaning?" He looked at the dust in front of him and frowned. "Where are the enemies? I want to see what monsters Ganon will send out." Roar. Loki's face froze. Boom boom. This was a slow and heavy footsteps. Princess Washang's face was not good either, and the breath transmitted made her body a little stiff. Just from the deep breathing, she seemed to have some idea of the enemy she was about to face. Princess Washang forced a smile and said to Link, "Thanks to you, Link, for weakening Ganon severely before." Otherwise, it would not be Ganon's minions, but Ganon himself who went into battle. Loki hurriedly looked at Princess Washan. Little girl, what do you mean, the enemy is strong? He hadn't finished speaking. 4 tall figures with golden bodies walked out of the dust. Horsehooves thicker than Loki's waist, hair like a porcupine, muscles like rocks, extremely terrifying faces, facial features that seemed to explode from the center, full of tyranny, hair spread out, like an angry lion. Golden Centaur. The strongest among the centaurs. The strongest destroyer rampant in Hyrule. When Link traveled in Hyrule, Ganon was always trapped in the castle by Zelda, entangled with each other, and could not come out to make trouble. The range of activities of the 4 sacred beasts is limited, and the local residents who have been harassed have found a way to coexist with the out-of-control sacred beasts. Therefore, the biggest threat to the people of Hyrule is this golden, extremely gorgeous, and extremely tyrannical golden centaur. Link clenched the Master Sword tightly and did not move. Loki did not know what to say, and the Washan princess began to show some panic. She looked at Link with a firm look and said, "No. You can't go into battle in this state against enemies of this level. Otherwise." She suddenly stopped talking. Because Link, the primary Link with 3 health points, smiled at her, and the smile was beautiful and warm, which was of course secondary. The important thing was the confidence in the smile. This Link in his current state was only twice the human limit. This Link would be killed without being hit by the golden centaur. There was no fear at all. Since Midona was not present, the increasingly silent Link smiled and said to the Washan princess, "Protect yourself. I won't let you bear too much pressure." Then Link spread his wings and flew towards the 4 centaurs. Because the speed was also slowed down a lot, even if he was flying, the Washan princess and Loki quickly caught up with him. Loki asked cautiously, "What tactics? I'll make a feint, and you'll sneak attack. Or should I go to the centaurs and pretend to surrender, then wait for them to trust me before I backstab them?" Link estimated his current strength. He said, "I'll take care of 2, and you can take care of 1 each." Princess Washan was shocked and said hurriedly, "No. You'll be at too much risk this way. I'll do it." Link shook his head. He knew Princess Washan's ability. She was very strong and had extraordinary sword skills. She could fight Link for 100 years without losing. It was no problem to deal with 1 golden centaur, but 2 would be fatal. Centaurs are natural fighting creatures. It's hard to resist 1-on-1, and it's a nightmare to fight 2-on-2. As for Loki, he had the ability, but Link knew it. Loki could only deal with the golden centaurs. He asked Loki to use illusion to confuse the centaurs and delay time. Wait for Link to deal with the 2 golden centaurs and come back to help Loki resist. In other words, Link had to take on most of the pressure. Princess Washan was worried, but she said no more. Because 4 golden centaurs rushed over with terrifying momentum, the ground shook violently, as if a modern tank army was rushing over here. It was the first time that Loki saw 4 centaurs rushing in unison. It was not that he had never fought centaurs before. When the Sky Princess needed a life to reign, Loki also killed monsters together, including centaurs. But this momentum and this scene were not comparable to those red-skinned and blue-skinned centaurs he had killed. They were not at the same level at all. The battle was about to start. Link suddenly stretched out his hand, stopped Princess Washan, and fed an attack fruit hard candy to her little lips. Princess Washan was startled, and after seeing the thing clearly, she ate it obediently. This was a cooking hard candy made from 5 master bananas. It could greatly increase the attack power. Link always cherished these fruit hard candies. He was a little reluctant to eat them. But now the situation was a little difficult, so he naturally would not be stingy with his beloved princess. The Sky Princess felt a surge of hot energy in her body, and her own strength rose steadily. While the Sky Princess was digesting the banana fruit hard candy, 4 centaurs rushed over. A layer of ice was laid under Link's feet, and he slid on the ice and sprinted quickly. The golden centaur in the center roared and swept with a big sword. Even if a life as strong as Thor was hit by such a move, he would have to sit in a wheelchair and swing a hammer in the next life. In an instant, Link jumped lightly, and the wind rippled in his hair. Time slowed down. Perfect dodge. Bullet time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 314 Hardcore Firepower Suppression. Link has never had any tactics in a fight. He rushed to the front of the Golden Centaur, and the strong wind had already made his sensitive nose, which was left, after switching to the Shadow Wolf form, smell a sweet smell of blood. It is said that the sweat shed by the Arabian horse is red blood. It seems that these Golden Centaurs are all famous horses selected from 100. Link has ridden many horses, and many centaurs. Of course, none of the centaurs have bad intentions, and they all want to throw Link off and smash him into a meat paste with their swords to nourish the grassland. Link has always wanted to tame a centaur as a mount, but he has never succeeded. He jumped up and quickly played bullet time. Now he is weak and his strength is only half of the limit of an ordinary person. In terms of strength alone, 10,000 of them are not the opponent of the centaurs. If it is a golden centaur, then even 100,000 of them cannot beat it. If you can't win the competition of strength, then it's time to show your skills. In the bullet time, the centaur's sword smashed a big pit, and dirt and rocks flew out. Link stepped on a hard place to gain leverage, leaned back, holding the master sword in one hand and the dragon scale sword in the other. First, he swung it with all his strength, making Link feel that his shoulder was about to be thrown out. The bright sword energy of the master sword pierced like ripples on a lake, and hit the head of the golden centaur hard, immediately causing stiffness. Then he stretched his body forward with his shoulders, stabbed at the other centaur, and spun rapidly with his body as the center, shaking out a whirlwind of swords. The dragon scale sword swung out a flame of light, and the hot sword light slashed at the golden centaur, one wave stronger than the other. In a short period of time, Link had swung 14 swords, and he was very happy to temporarily beat himself out of the state. The bullet time stopped, and the two centaurs saw that they were inexplicably attacked, so they quickly used their front hooves to force their buttocks backwards, and jumped back to make room and adjust the rhythm of the battle. As for the other two golden centaurs, they looked at Link with blatant ill intentions. Link was panting. Princess Washang tried her best to get ahead. She swung her sword and then flashed a sky full of sword shadows to hit one of the golden centaurs. She used all her strength. She was good at group fighting and had a large attack range, so her moves were open and closed, and they flew everywhere, which was particularly beautiful. This immediately snatched the attention of the two centaurs from Link. Raw. The golden centaurs were pure fighting creatures. Even when eating grass, they ate grass with murderous intent on their faces, so they rushed with amazing momentum. They used their hard bodies to shatter the sword energy released by Princess Washang. Loki also knew that it would be difficult for Princess Washang to deal with two golden centaurs at the same time. He whispered, "This simple-minded beast is simply my favorite." A light flashed on his body, and after it circulated, the fifth golden centaur appeared in front of him. The centaur Loki transformed attracted one of the two centaurs attacking the Washang princess, and stood there in a daze. Natasha and the two princesses, who were watching the battle from a distance and protecting the stone statue, twitched their mouths. Loki turned into a female centaur who was posing, with a flaming red mouth on her furry face. She was flirting with the golden centaur. The golden centaur looked at Loki in shock. His face was a little dull. Loki hummed in his heart, "These stupid and barbaric creatures can be dealt with just a little trick." He was confident that he could confuse a golden centaur and wait for Link to have enough strength to fight back. But Zelda's hurried voice came to his ears. "Be careful, Loki. The centaurs are all female. You are useless." What? Loki's body froze. Suddenly, he found that the golden centaur in front of him, after a brief shock, became more and more murderous and roared towards Loki. The expression was obvious. This strange fellow in front of him was too annoying. He must teach him a lesson. Loki shouted in shock, "They are all female? Are you kidding?" He raised his head and turned to run away. The roar behind him was getting closer and closer, and the golden centaur followed closely behind him in anger. Link was also shocked when he saw Loki's transformation. But he didn't have time to remind Loki, firstly because he didn't like to talk, and secondly because he really didn't have time. The two centaurs rushed over again, in unison, like twins who had served in the military. The violent breath made the cold night sky hot. Whoosh, suddenly jumped up. Two strong golden centaurs like artillery shells pressed forward, and when they approached, the strong wind that came first was enough to kill ordinary people. Link was like standing under a helicopter that had started up, and his hair and clothes were immediately blown straight. But he didn't panic. And if he panicked, he would be finished. He jumped up lightly, observed the situation calmly, and played another bullet time. The two hot centaurs that were running fast suddenly slowed down and slid in the cement. Link leaned sideways and shot a centaur in the head with a sword. Then the bullet time ended, and the other golden centaur still rushed forward fearlessly. Link had already landed, holding up the ice shield. Shield counter. Bang. Link liked the slight touch of a successful shield counter. The centaur flew out, and the greater the force he rushed, the faster he flew back. He crashed into the big pit. When Link was hit by the centaur, he didn't even stand firmly. The golden centaur that was stabbed by Link's sword woke up from the stiff state, and just when he shouted, he was about to give Link, who was not far away, a mountain of pressure. He saw Link took out an arrow and a bow, and he had already drawn the bow, and was waiting for her. Bang! The eyes went black. The impact of the arrow blasted her face, and knocked the golden centaur unconscious. She wailed and fell limp. Like humans, centaurs have the most abundant facial nerves. Attacking the face will cause temporary loss of combat effectiveness, and the body will find it difficult to fight back. So Link likes to hit the enemy in the face. He waited with a bow and arrow. The golden centaur, who was shot in the face by his sword, regained consciousness in less than half a second. Link fired the second arrow again. Once again, the unfortunate centaur was stunned, while the golden centaur, whose shield bounced back, has not returned yet. Link's shoulders trembled, and his left arm has become an afterimage. Arrows poured out like machine gun bullets, constantly hitting the face of the golden centaur, constantly suppressing it. Attacking the head is twice as much damage as attacking other parts, and Link's headshot attack will also cause stiffness. This is his strategy, to use the weak to defeat the strong. Attacking the head causes twice the damage of a normal attack, and will cause the enemy's body to be stunned. Throwing weapons causes twice the damage of a normal attack. Stealth back attacks cause 8 times the damage of normal damage. With this, although Link is weak now, he can rely on the mechanism of the attack law to defeat the centaur who is 100,000 times stronger than himself. Link didn't carry many arrows. All the arrows he shot were made of ice, which was almost inexhaustible. But when he had just shot more than 30 arrows, the golden centaur suddenly rolled over and dodged, causing Link's fire suppression to end. He sighed. It turned out that he couldn't suppress them to death in one breath like Hyrule. Chapter 315 3 minutes, 3 golden horses. The golden centaur had just stood up and roared. The sound waves rippled in the night sky, and all the insects and small rodents around him quickly radiated and fled. The golden centaur was hit by Link's unreasonable arrows, and was full of anger. The centaur never adjusted his mentality, and he had to vent his anger. He turned left and right, looking for Link frantically. A hot flame was brewing in her throat. Just as she was about to spit out the flames and light up the night sky, Link didn't give her a chance. At this moment, Link had quietly moved behind the golden centaur. He leaped up and used the master sword to hit the back of her head, and the sword was chopped down with little force. But the impact on the back of the head would seriously affect the body. The golden centaur groaned again, and the fire brewing in her chest, like the anger in her heart, had to be vented. As a result, it exploded in her mouth. Link quickly did a backflip and retreated quickly. The centaur exploded into a ball of sparks and rushed in all directions. The ground under his feet also collapsed rapidly. The explosion quickly caught up with Link. Link had to condense ice and snow into a round shield and use a shield to counter the impact. Why did she explode? Link hadn't reacted yet. He was just thinking about riding on the back of the centaur for a few fun times. Zelda sent out the bird to assist Loki in the battle. It clearly captured the scene of Link fighting the centaur explosion. Zelda was shocked. Link has already dealt with the centaur. Natasha clapped her hands and said a little indifferently, "Great." Black Widow was a conceited woman, standing with Zelda and waiting for Link. To return victoriously was not in line with her personality. But there was no other way. After all, it was not realistic for her to rush up and fight the vicious golden centaur. Link took a look at the battle situation. Princess Huashang's sword was like a tide, suppressing the golden centaur she was dealing with. Although her fighting posture was as beautiful as dancing, and even the sword light was very sharp, the damage was really amazing. Link's evaluation of Princess Huashang was a little low. After all, he always looked at Zelda and others as a protector. In fact, Princess Huashang was very strong, especially strong, and she was getting stronger. As a princess whose country was destroyed and her family was ruined, Princess Huashang never stopped improving her strength. Even when she was playing with Link, she kept running energy in her body to enhance her cultivation. She was now dealing with a golden centaur. Compared with Link, hunting a golden centaur was just a matter of time. Link didn't need to worry at all. Loki was in a worse situation. He was chased by the furious golden centaur. The two of them were spinning in circles on the ground. People who didn't know would think they were playing a game. No one knew how Loki angered the golden centaur into this state. The sound of galloping horses came from behind Link. The centaur's stealth level is average, so he can only fight others openly, and he can only be killed by Link openly. He turned his eyes and saw the golden centaur that he had deflected, sprinting towards him like a fly, stretching his body, and the centaur's special bow was pulled round, sparking with electricity, and a thunderbolt pierced Link. Bang! Another shield deflection. The electric shock was rebounded. Link also pulled away and rushed forward. If it were before, he would definitely absorb the golden centaur's electricity for his own use comfortably. But now his physical condition is too poor. Doing so is suicide. The golden centaur saw that his electric shock was not only useless, but Link was wandering like a ghost. Immediately dragged the big sword and rushed towards Link in a rotation. This move of spinning slash has a very large attack area. If Link was slightly touched, he would lose a piece of meat wherever he was touched. Link smiled. He jumped up and slashed at the center of the spinning slash, the centaur's head, with a sword, and the sword light erupted. The surroundings flashed for a moment. Spinning slash? Using Link's best attack against Link himself? Just a light move. The golden centaur immediately lost balance and hit the ground hard, pushing out 2 high mounds of earth with his head and sword. Link fell gracefully. He had hunted countless centaurs, enough to pile up a small mountain. This was the source of his confidence, rich experience. Every move of the centaur, what will happen next, how to resist, if the advantage is expanded, how to turn the expanded advantage into victory, and so on. Even if the current centaur is 10 times stronger, it can't beat Link in his weakest state. In the distance, Loki was hit hard by the electric energy released by the golden centaur. He was knocked away and is now in a dangerous state. Link made a quick decision and immediately jumped up and jumped on the back of the golden centaur who was struggling to get up. Although the golden centaur is simple-minded, he has a strong self-esteem. That is, he must never be ridden by humans. So she became frantic, stomping the ground with her front and back hooves, shaking her body violently, trying to throw Link off. But Link clung to the centaur's neck, as if he was climbing on a rock, holding the mane tightly with one hand, and clamping his legs together. Then he stabbed the centaurs, but with a sword. Nay. The golden centaur neighed in anger, and rushed forward subconsciously. Link then stabbed the golden centaurs but several times. The centaur ran fast, and in panic, the centaur ran instinctively, while Link did it intentionally. So, the centaur Link rode hit the golden centaur chasing Loki hard. The two horses collided, and directly knocked over the golden centaur chasing Loki. Link patted the one he was riding and said, "Be good and let me ride for a while. I need to borrow your strength." The golden centaur shouted angrily, "Nay." At this time, the centaur she hit stood up, and looked coldly at the one Link was riding. Hitting her again, and being ridden by a human again. The golden centaur was simple-minded, and his hatred was immediately transferred. He roared and rushed towards Link. Link switched his weapon to Mistodin, and whipped the horse hard. He shouted, "Charge." The golden centaur screamed, and ran towards his own kind. The two strongest centaurs rushed towards each other frantically. The opposite horse held a weapon, and slashed the head of the horse Link was riding with a fierce sword. The blood was all over Link, and Link fought back with a shield counter. Then Darkle exploded behind him, roaring with boiling lightning. The two heroes used their full strength and took advantage of the horsepower to attack. Link drew out his dragon scale sword and slashed at the neck of the golden centaur. Swish! The big head flew into the sky. Link slid down the fallen horse with blood. The sword and body were all hot blood stains. The blood was steaming. Zelda hurriedly checked the time. There were less than 3 minutes left before the battle. 3 minutes, 3 of the strongest golden centaurs. This is the power of the weakest Link with 3 hearts. Thanks to Lily Shooping for 600 starting coins. Thanks to Cyanatang 246 for 100 starting coins. Thanks to Bayuxiu for giving me for 100 starting coins. Chapter 316 Goddess Resurrection, Gift Pack. Link quickly finished the fight, walked up to him, bloody, and pulled Loki up, as if nothing had happened. Loki looked at Link covered in blood, and said with a smile, "You really doubt it? Have you recovered your strength?" Link shook his head honestly, and looked at Loki with his eyes open. Loki knew what Link meant, so he smiled and said, "It's okay. It's just an electric shock." He shook his shoulders in pain, then kept that standard, but somewhat malicious smile and said, "It's far worse than my brother's thunder. I've been hit a lot. Especially when that guy was in adolescence. He was as annoying as an autumn sweater." Seeing that Loki was fine, Link looked at the Washang princess. He saw that the Washang princess had almost finished the fight. Her brilliant sword moves directly put the golden centaur in a passive state from beginning to end. Under the attack of the violent sword force, the golden centaur wailed in pain, knelt on the ground, and turned into thick smoke and died. With a thump, the ground shook. Link, Princess Washang and the others looked up and saw that the hideous face on the moon in the sky disappeared as if it had been hit by a punch. Princess Washang hurried over. She knew that Link had solved the battle quickly and killed 3 golden centaurs in a row. She was just worried that Link would be injured. Link quickly flashed with lightning, and Loki dodged with disgust. This reminded him of his brother who could discharge electricity. After a short flash of light, the blood stains on Link's body and clothes were all shaken clean. He returned to the original fair-skinned blonde boy. Princess Washang ran over, put her hands on Link's shoulders, and looked at him carefully. Seeing that he was fine, there was no injury on his body, but his expression was a little tired. So she completely relaxed. Come and see quickly. The stone statue is valuable." At this time, Midona's surprised and happy scream came from a distance. The 3 hurried over, and Loki followed at the end. His body shook and emitted some lightning. Link dragged Princess Washang over, but now because of the greatly reduced speed, it was Princess Washang who dragged him. Link stumbled a little and came to the statue. He found that the statue had turned into a pure transparent crystal. It turned into a diamond statue. Midona used her crown to seriously knock on the goddess statue twice, making 2 ding ding sounds. Midona touched her chin and thought for a long time, then said seriously and calmly, "It's the crystal." Crystal statue? The goddess statue glowed, but it was much weaker than before. It was obvious that it had merged with the power in Link's body. At this time, everyone heard the ethereal voice of the goddess Hylia. The voice was gentle and beautiful, but it was hard to tell the age. It was unclear where it came from, as if it was coming from all directions. Or was it that there was no sound from the outside world at all, but only from everyone's heart? Link, thank you for what you did. Ganon's power is still growing, and your journey is still long. Link breathed a sigh of relief. In the crystal statue, he felt that there was a weak, but unfathomable soul with a lifelike temperament, but different from all life, which was gradually becoming stable. He understood that dangerous dead world. The main body of the goddess Hylia was dead, but Link desperately protected the remnant of the last arc of soul. At the last moment, he came to the world created by the goddess herself in Link's body. Although it was just a little bit of soul arc light that was not even a soul fragment, as ethereal as the shadow of the wind. It was not even the will of the goddess Hylia, but just a microwave in the water, the last echo of the soul wave. But these were enough. Just a remnant of soul was enough to keep the goddess alive in this world. Just like she said herself. The hero died, but he will live in the legend. With a click, everyone exclaimed, and saw that one of the wings of the goddess statue suddenly broke and fell to the ground. Link hurriedly picked it up and suddenly froze. The wing of the goddess in his hand was smooth and flowing, and the colorful light warmed Link's eyes. After the last flash of light, the fragments of the wing turned into a transparent Hylia shield. Under the illumination of Natasha's flashlight, it still refracted colorful light. Link had never seen such a beautiful Hylia shield. This was not a weapon at all, but a magnificent work of art. The gift of the goddess. Link couldn't help but laugh. Take this thing to fight? The next voice of the goddess only resounded in Link himself. My child. May this shield protect your safety. It is made of a part of me, has a trace of my will, can absorb energy, and is indestructible. This is a shield for the brave. I'm weak at the moment, and even rely on your strength to prevent me from dissipating. I can only use my wings to make a shield for you. Link felt warm in his heart. You have seen the truth of this world. Ganon is actually the collection of my will of death. He gathers all the power to attack, and is bound to stir up the dark waves. At the same time, the world, the most cruel era is about to come. But I believe in you, my child. Link nodded. Your wrist. Link subconsciously looked up at his left wrist, on which was the trace left by the tear gem of the goddess Hylia entering his body. The pattern of 2 wings. This is the will of the goddess Hylia that I gave you, which can help you dissolve Ganon's curse. You need to further explore. You are fighting with the will of the world, and all things in the world will help you. Remember to explore the power in it. As for the power of the holy triangle in your body, although you have made a lot of efforts, the task of collecting it is still a long way to go. It is my blessing to you. In front of Link's eyes, the complete form of the power of the holy triangle suddenly flashed. The big triangle composed of 3 small triangles released colorful light. Link immediately felt a vigorous power in it. This power is strong enough to defeat anyone in the world. Link took a deep breath and calmed himself down. This kind of thrilling energy, can the human body really withstand it? He had never seen such a terrifying and powerful energy. The goddess' voice was a little tired, but the joy in her tone never diminished. The shield has consumed a lot of my energy. It's time for me to fall into a deep sleep. As the will and creator of the world, my death, my misery, my weakness, my nothingness. You have seen it all. The mission is heavy and the road is long. I hope you can protect this world that belongs to everyone for me before I fully recover. Once again, blessings to you, my child. Chapter 317. The weakest Link equals Captain America equals to Hawkeyes. Link was shocked and suddenly opened his eyes. He looked up at the crystal statue of the goddess Hylia in front of him. After changing its nature, the goddess's posture also changed. She held her hands in front of her chest with her fingers crossed. The hooded head had a face that was much more delicate than Link's carving. Even in the transparent and colorful crystal, the goddess's appearance could be clearly seen. So this is the true face of the goddess, Link thought, and the angle of the goddess's face was just facing Link. Her expression was relieved and kind, as if she was looking at her young child. Link was a little absent-minded. Although the goddess's facial features were clear, it was strange that it was impossible to evaluate whether her appearance was good or bad. It was impossible to tell her age, and it was impossible to tell whether she hated beauty. It was impossible to make any evaluation. Even with such a clear face, it still seemed as if there was a layer of fog covering her face. This was a face that could not be judged by human aesthetics. And the 2 wings stretched behind her in order to give Link a better shield. A part of the wing was broken, and it became a broken wing, adding a touch of beauty. Quicksilver spoke a little stiffly. Is this crystal statue alive? Zelda looked at the crystal statue seriously and said, it seems a little inappropriate to use the concept of life to evaluate the goddess Hylia. Link came back to his senses and carefully stroked the smooth crystal shield of the goddess in his hand. The crystal Hylia shield, like Link's master sword, maintains the same constant temperature as Link's body temperature. It is obviously a protective gear, but it feels so soft to the touch, just like holding Zelda's hand. This is the wings of the goddess Hylia, and also the shield to protect Link's safety. Link turned around immediately, and Midona became small again, happily flying on Link's shoulder. In order to maintain balance, she pulled Link's ponytail and waved to everyone. Let's go back. Then she was knocked over by the angry Fang, because Fang thought Midona was bullying Link. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's faces fell. What about us? Loki turned around and smiled. Didn't you spend half a day as a captive? You escaped without permission, which is a heavier crime, but since you are injured, I won't punish you. He said it as if he was the leader of the Avengers. Then Loki raised his head with some contempt, brewing words. It's just your sister. It seems that she has created many painful dreams for everyone. I don't know how they will fight back. Scarlet Witch's face was bitter. The Sky Princess had a sympathetic smile on her face and said to them, "It's okay. Everyone is a good person. I won't bully you." But Scarlet Witch was thinking in her heart, but those people are so scary. Link and others quickly returned. Link held the crystal statue and shook it into the cabin. He was particularly good at lifting things. Natasha drove the fighter plane and quickly returned to the Avengers building. As Link walked down the plane, Thor happily came forward to hug Link, patted Link's back, and said in a muffled voice, "Thank you for taking care of my brother." As a result, Thor saw blue flames between Link's shoulders and hair, and then condensed into a cute fishman sister, Mipha. Mipha covered her mouth and screamed in panic, "Link, don't worry, I will heal you." Thor felt a damp heat in his arms and hurriedly let go of Link. Link's face was pale and his chin was full of blood, which wet Thor's shirt. The shirt was bought for him by Tony's people. For bad taste, it was a blue t-shirt with a diamond shape in the center and a big S in the middle. Now the S was replaced by Link's blood. He bent down and coughed, his strength greatly reduced, and he could no longer withstand Thor's strong hug, and the two heartbreaking palms on his back, which injured Link internally. Mipha hugged Link's back, and the injuries in his body were visibly healed under Mipha's gentle and cold protective power. Thor hurriedly apologized, propped up his knees and asked, "Sorry, Link, what's wrong with you?" Roger shouted, "Thor, Link may have been injured in the battle." Tony shouted, "Don't hit Link. I borrowed your electricity and returned it to you. Don't take advantage of others." The three princesses hurriedly supported Link, and Princess Washang said seriously, "Link's body has greatly declined due to some reasons. Now it is at most at the level of 2 human limits. It can't withstand your heavy blows." Fangire chased Thor angrily and spit fire. Thor had no choice but to be chased around, shouting, "I was wrong. I apologize to Link. No, don't burn my hair." Thor couldn't do anything with this little Fangire, and of course he was not afraid of a young dragon. But he knew that, even if he hurt Link, Link would not blame him, but if he hurt Fangire, Link might hang up and beat the two brothers at the same time. Natasha looked at the mess around her. It was already messy, and now it was even more messy. The Avengers building was almost a dangerous building, and the top was open to the sky. Tony and Banner were still drinking red wine leisurely. Of course, they couldn't be leisurely now. After Tony knew that Link's strength had dropped significantly, he said, "We found some information while you were still here. We were going to look for Ultron. He seemed to be plotting something. Link, you are not feeling well, so you should rest first. We can go, or I can go alone." Tony was in a bad mood. Ultron had caused such a big mess, and the one who felt the most uncomfortable was Tony himself. If Ultron hurt some innocent people, Tony would definitely feel guilty for the rest of his life. Link's body quickly returned to normal through Mipha's protective power. At most, he coughed up some blood and felt a little hungry. He stood up and shook his head, indicating that he was ready to fight. Roger said seriously, "Link, I know you are very strong, but you are in poor physical condition now. If you go to track down Ultron, your life may be in danger. Don't be impulsive." Natasha came over at this time, with a strange look on her face. Before she could say anything, she heard Madonna speak. "Even if Link is in poor physical condition now, he is the weakest Link, but he is at least twice the limit of ordinary people. He should be at the same level as you. If you can go, why can't Link?" Roger's face rose. Hawkeye sneered, "The worst Link, and the captain, had her after Madonna beat Rogers hard. She continued to make up for it and increase the damage. Yes, Link is very weak and can only be at the same level as the captain. If nothing else, at least he can beat Hawkeye and Natasha at the same time." Hawkeye's mouth twitched. He was very angry and wanted to refute, but even in the strongest archery, he was still no match for Link. Natasha rubbed her eyes. She had personally seen Link kill 3 golden centaurs in a short period of time, so she naturally didn't want to say more at this time. Thank you for the support of 100 starting coins from Janaiwi Junzi. Chapter 318, Battle against Ultron. At this time, Loki walked off the plane with Quicksilver on his back. Scarlet Witch followed timidly behind him. Because Link had rescued them, even though the brother and sister still joined the evil organization, their personalities were no longer as cynical as in the original time and space, and they were just like 2 ordinary boys and girls. Scarlet Witch forced a smile and waved her hands, which were bound by the restraints. At the same time, hello. Tony looked gloomy, stared at Scarlet Witch, and said, okay, what gifts should we prepare for these 2 little Yige teams? The durian baked by Link? When Natasha heard about the durian, her face turned pale, and she hurriedly said, forget it, they are just children. Link has forgiven them. Since Link has spoken, there is no need for others to say anything. But while Thor was being chased by Fang, he looked at Scarlet Witch with some doubts. Tony pointed at Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch with a signal pen. You two, I remember you were the same age as Link. Then he looked at Link and Zelda, who were still 14 or 15 years old, and had childish faces. Tony spread his hands. Why haven't Link and Zelda grown up? Zelda shook her head. I don't know. Link and I are over 100 years old. Roger sighed and shook his head. It's great to be forever young. Hawkeye nudged Rogers with his elbow. Captain, you are also over 100 years old. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch looked at Link in shock. Tony smiled evilly and discussed with Banner, why don't we extract some blood from Link's body and see if we can develop a drug that can keep the face young forever? I think it will be a big profit. Thor looked at everyone in silence and spread his hands. What's so strange? When I was 100 years old, I was just a little boy. Seeing everyone looking at Thor strangely, Thor's face turned red. Loki, carrying Quicksilver on his back, smiled evilly. Yes, a little boy. Now too. At this time, Link returned to the cabin and held up the crystal goddess statue. Thor screamed, it's the goddess Hylia. Zelda looked at each other in surprise. Thor was able to recognize goddess Hylia in an instant, which means that he really identified with the goddess. Link carefully moved it to a relatively clean place and put it down. When the statue of the goddess was put down, everyone's hearts, whether they knew it was the statue of goddess Hylia or not, suddenly calmed down. Things like Ultron's escape should not make people upset. Even Tony, who never believed in gods and demons, felt that his bad mood, because of Ultron's problems, had improved. In the Hyrule continent, every village or city with human settlements has a statue of goddess Hylia. Perhaps it is because of the power of the goddess that people can calm down. Midona asked on behalf of Link, where are we going to fight next? At dawn. The sun appeared on the horizon, and the drowsy people in the plane were immediately cheered up. Tony told Link what he had discovered. I know a man named Strucker. He is an arrogant and lawless arms dealer, and he has all kinds of terrible things in his hands. He got some special metals from Wakanda. Do you know what they are? Tony kept it a secret. Link whispered, vibranium. Tony. He rubbed his hair in confusion, looked at Link again, and asked in a teasing but serious tone, tell me the truth. Can you really predict the future? Link smiled and did not comment. Tony could only continue. Ultron must be looking for Strucker now. No matter what he wants to do, our goal is only one, to find Ultron and destroy Ultron. Link nodded. Midona was sleeping on his shoulder. Link did not let the 3 princesses come. Ganon was beaten hard by Link now, and now he is in a weak period. Even if the goddess came to the world, she could only send 4 golden centaurs to destroy. So Link was not worried that Ganon would come out to harm Zelda during this period. Link let them have a good rest. And the ability of the Washan princess was also fully demonstrated in that battle. Link re-estimated the strength of Zelda, who had walked out of the battlefield and was more confident in her. And Peppa had already fallen asleep and was not woken up by the battle with the centaur. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were also left in the Avengers building, guarded by Loki. Loki is good at escaping from prison, and he is also good at dealing with people who escaped from prison. And Fangire was still very energetic because he had taken a nap before. He was looking at Midona on Link's shoulder with ill intentions, intending to play a prank on her while she was sleeping. Link naturally saw it, so he grabbed Fangaya and stopped her from messing around. They arrived at the place where Strucker was hiding, which was a desolate coastal city, and Strucker and his men were entrenched in a desolate factory. Rogers led the team in, but they found that the factory was empty. It seemed spooky here. At this time, a hidden body fell down in the corner, with its eyes wide open. Tony said, "Let's hurry up. Someone has died here." They rushed into the factory. They came to the depths, and obvious bloodstains and signs of fighting began to appear around them. Just then, Ultron pulled Stark with an iron hand and walked out of the room. Tony shouted, "Hey, my stupid kid, what are you running around for?" Ultron looked at Tony with disgust. "Tony Stark, are you going to stop me?" Tony looked at Stark and Ultron's hand. His face was purple and red, his eyes were wide open, and they were about to pop out. Obviously, he was strangled to death by Ultron. Tony's tone was a little angry. "I created you to protect mankind. I hope you can check if you have any bugs." Ultron said no more and waved his hand. Several gloomy humanoid creatures walked out of the corners around them. Link, who was hiding in the distance and preparing to shoot, was startled for a moment. He hurriedly threw a blue light bomb at Tony. Before Tony could react, a blue shockwave blew up in front of him. He was blown away. He knew it was Link's skill and asked blankly, "Link, not only has your body regressed, but your aim has also deteriorated." He suddenly stopped complaining. Not only was he blown away, but also 3 humanoid monsters that climbed up from under the bridge. Half human and half mechanized, the flesh part was hideous green muscle. Ultron smiled grimly. "In addition to getting some vibranium from Strucker, I also got some good stuff." Rogers rushed out and shouted, "Fight." Hawkeye immediately pulled the bow and aimed at Ultron. And Banner suddenly felt something strange in his body. He was very irritable. Chapter 319. This Hulk is disobedient. So, Natasha noticed something was wrong with Banner and took 2 steps back. But this obviously didn't make her feel at ease. She watched Banner stare at her helplessly, then rolled her eyes, and her muscles popped out like popcorn, tearing her clothes. The Green Hulk panted heavily and appeared inside the factory. As soon as Rogers rushed forward, he was stopped by 2 people, and his hands were stabbed with claws like goat horns. Rogers swung his shield back. Although he didn't have Link's shield counter, the energy-absorbing properties of vibranium also allowed Rogers to try out a similar shield counter skill. He lowered his body, and with a whoosh, he swept down a person with 1 leg. Another person in front of him screamed and rushed over. But there was a sound of an arrow breaking through the air above Rogers' head, followed by Hawkeye's low voice, "Shield." Rogers immediately blocked the vibranium shield in front of him, and the arrow rushed to the man's face, and then exploded with a bang. After the explosion, the 2 enemies were hit against the wall, but they were not dead and were groaning. Rogers observed and his pupils shrank. Is this a cyborg? These enemies that suddenly appeared were half mechanical and half flesh, with swollen flesh and muscles and a ferocious green skin color. Their eyes were lifeless and their cheeks were shaking rapidly, as if they were mentally ill. Then Hulk rushed over, ouch, and punched the 2 cyborgs into the wall one by one. Then he looked around with blood on his hands and red eyes. More cyborgs crawled out from all around. Natasha ran over in shock. These enemies are obviously made of Hulk's blood. Rogers nodded and watched the cyborgs around him, but they were very afraid of Hulk because of his presence. Hawkeye cursed in a low voice. Why did this arms smuggler hide such a thing? Tony in the distance was also cursing. What is Nick doing? This is obviously Ivan's technology. Didn't he ask him to destroy all of Ivan's experiments? If Nick was there, he would definitely be innocent. After all, he was already sidelined at the time. Maybe when he was lazy in the office and watching short videos of petting cats on the computer, he was under the surveillance of Hydra. Ultron chattered and laughed. These stupid mechanical cyborgs have been controlled by me. This will be my first batch of troops and your executioners. Ultron didn't have time to finish his words. There was a roar, and Thor fell from the sky, with lightning and fireworks all the way. Even his beard and hair were flashing with bright electric light. He hit the ground with a heavy hammer, and most of the large number of cyborgs around were electrocuted to death. Thor snorted. Incompetent mechanical creatures. Hulk suddenly imitated Link, grabbed Roger's shield, and threw it out fiercely like grabbing a plate, knocking over a group of mechanical biohumans. Ultron's mechanical face showed some awkward expressions. Tony flew into the sky and said arrogantly, "Executioner? We have already dealt with this kind of garbage. My stupid child." Iron Man immediately crashed into Ultron, and the two of them were entangled. Link's sword swung, and he gently tapped the enemy who was rushing towards him. His strength was greatly reduced now, but his superb swordsmanship was not reduced. He thrust out his sword, although not as fast as before, but it was fast enough, tapping the chin of the biohuman who was rushing towards him lightly, and immediately withdrew the sword, and turned to stab the second person. He didn't even use force, but stabbed a little into the soft part, not going deeper. This ensured Link's efficiency. There were 5 mechanical biohumans rushing towards him. Flying over, Link dodged and retreated, and the sword light left marks on everyone. Then behind him, 5 enemies suddenly stood still. Their bodies lost vitality. This is Link's most economical fighting method. Pierce the chin of the mechanical bioman, release a little current, burn their motherboard. That's it. Tony also got angry, hugged Ultron's head, stared at him. "You are my mistake." Then crushed it in one go. Bang. Tony raised his arms high, and his body armor disintegrated, and a large number of shells were released from his shoulders, back, outer thighs and other parts at the same time. After a short period of positioning, they were released instantly. The scene was in chaos for a while. All the mechanical biomen around were hit and exploded. Tony snorted. This kind of mechanical bioman has the same characteristic, that is, the body maintains an abnormally high temperature, and the heart beats very fast, which is particularly easy for Tony to locate. And Tony is a good boy who loves to study. Seeing Link and Thor use electricity to short circuit the mechanical bioman, he also used this method to aim his cannon directly at the control part of the cyborg's head. The effect was amazing. Tony felt a little relieved. In every battle, Link always stopped a lot of enemies and won the MVP, but this time Tony took the lead. He was not happy for a moment and suddenly thought, "Damn it, Link is weak now, why should I fight with him now?" But soon, Hulk's roar came. Roar. Tony turned his head. Link, comfort Hulk. Link spread his hands helplessly. Tony's eyes froze, and he saw Hulk's head, which was charred, and looked at him murderously. Rogers was a little embarrassed. "Tony, one of your shells hit Hulk." Tony pursed his lips and looked at Hulk with ill intentions. Suddenly he realized that he fired shells based on the abnormal temperature and heart rate of the human body. So, Hulk was also among them. "Ah, Hulk, I say bad luck to you. Is it too late now?" Tony held on to the last glimmer of hope. But the result was that Hulk rushed over with passion and wanted to give Tony a hot kiss. Enough. Link hurriedly came over, and his archer's eyes caught a few robots and mechanical cyborgs sneaking away quietly. So he shouted, "Hulk, I will comfort you. You quickly kill all the escaping Ultron." "Hulk, be quiet." Rogers and others nodded, and Hawkeye turned his hand and shot 2 cyborgs with 2 arrows. Natasha also started hunting the fleeing enemies with a gun. Roar. Hulk roared at Link, and did not calm down like before. Hulk should have noticed that Link was much weaker now. Hulk said angrily, "Link, weak." Fang Ya was so scared that she shrank behind Link's hair, and Hulk scared her. Link's mouth twitched, and he patted Fang Ya to show that it was okay, and there was nothing to be afraid of. He didn't like to talk much, since his soul was injured. Link had wasted so much time talking to Hulk, but this was the result. Tony shouted, "Link, you go chase him. I'll deal with Hulk. You're in poor health now." Link took a step forward to face Hulk, and said to Tony without turning his head, "I'm too slow now. Only you can fly. Go ahead. Here, leave it to me." Hulk didn't hesitate and punched him. But Link was faster, and threw a blue light bomb to the ground. Bang. The huge thrust sent Hulk flying. Link, holding the crystal Hylia shield, was not hurt at all. "Oh." Fang Ya cheered, and instigated Link to beat Hulk in dragon language. "Who told him to be so mean to me?" And Link just happened to have this plan. Chapter 320 Beating Hulk. Tony and the others hurried to chase after Ultron's robots. As long as one of Ultron's puppets escapes, Ultron will not die. Even if these annoying Ultron robots are killed, Ultron will still survive in the human network, which is the most difficult. To kill Ultron, we can only rely on Vision's power. Although Tony and the others are worried about Link's current state, Ultron is also very important. They can only abandon Link and chase after Ultron. The power of the blue light bomb is very weak and did not hurt Hulk at all. So Hulk rushed over angrily. The Hulk is not soft. Link has only been weak for a while and he dared to yell at him. This made Link unbearable. It seems that the previous few times the cleanup was not thorough enough. He was going to teach Hulk a lesson again. Just use this weakest state now. Hulk panted, looked around, grabbed the messy oil pipes on the side, and smashed them towards Link. The shadow in front of him was getting bigger and bigger, but Link was very calm and raised his shield. The crystal Hylia shield was still so beautiful. You can never get tired of it. Link was obsessed with the beauty of the crystal shield. He was very satisfied now. With the master sword and the crystal shield, he was a winner in life. But his men were not relaxed. They countered with a shield. The oil tank was thrown back the same way it was thrown. Hulk caught the thrown oil tank, roared, and threw it at Link again. Link countered with a shield again. The oil tank was thrown back to Hulk again. Hulk continued to throw. Link. The two of them ran back and forth many times with the 2-ton oil tank. Hulk seemed to have forgotten about the fight and focused on playing this game of throwing the ball back and forth. Yeah looked at Hulk as if he was a fool. At this time, Midona woke up after sleeping for a while and rubbed her eyes with her little hands. She heard the sound of boom 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 of the shield counter. When she woke up and looked, Midona was speechless. Link, what are you playing? Link shrugged. He didn't want to play with Hulk. Hulk didn't want to be in a good mood today. Link countered with a shield again. The oil tank returned to Hulk's hands for the nth time. Hulk went to catch it excitedly. Link was speechless, but Hulk was having fun. When Link bounced back to the oil tank, he crouched down, pulled out an arrow, pulled the string to the full, and shot it at Hulk's eyeball. Now that Link was so weak, he could use his full strength without hesitation. Especially against Hulk, who was simple-minded and tough. Hulk was about to catch the ball when his eyes suddenly hurt. Then the oil tank hit him on the top of his head. Hulk's eyes were full of stars. Roar. Hulk was so angry when he saw Link's rudeness that he jumped over with a bang, intending to throw Link like an oil tank. But Link took a step back gently. Hulk landed on the ground. No one in the world had customized shoes for Hulk. Hulk was also unwilling to wear shoes because he didn't want his feet to be restrained. As a result, his feet had no anti-slip effect at all. The ground was quietly covered with a layer of ice by Link. Hulk couldn't stand still. His heels lightened, and he fell to the ground. Link stood in front of him with his hands on his hips. Hulk roared and tried to stand up, but he fell again. So Hulk used all 4 limbs and jumped towards Link. In addition, his green body made him look like a big toad. Link smiled, turned around and jumped, stepping on an iron shield. Link was reluctant to use the crystal Hylia shield, and in front of him was a slippery ice surface, skating leisurely. So this is a strange picture. Link was skating leisurely in front of him. Hulk was like a big toad, jumping and jumping. Link's skating skills were good enough to win an Olympic gold medal, so Hulk couldn't catch up. But Hulk is Hulk, and he has his own way to solve problems. He suddenly stood up again and ran towards Link. He stepped hard, directly breaking the ice surface, and quickly pounced towards Link. Midona and Fang were both startled. They hurriedly pulled Link's hair and shouted, "That big Pepper is coming." Link smiled. Suddenly he stopped and turned beautifully. He raised the iron shield under his feet. The Hulk came to attack, roaring. His white teeth were bigger than Link's small face. His fist was even bigger than Link's chest. With this punch, Link would either be knocked into the mantle or onto the moon, and Link's choice was another shield counter. Bang! Hulk hit the wall hard again, climbed up and roared madly. Although it was just an emotional release, even Fang knew what Hulk meant by that roar. Midona stuck out her tongue, made a face, and shouted, "Big guy, Link can counterattack with his shield. What's wrong with you? What can you do?" Hulk could understand Midona's ridicule. He was unwilling to accept it. Link did not agree. He was weak once. If he did not bully him this time, would there be another chance in the future? His simple brain naturally could not think long term. For example, the consequences of Link bullying him back after he recovered. Roar. Another roar. Yeah giggled. She knew that Hulk was angry. Then Midona felt something was wrong and said in a hoarse voice, "This sound wave." Hulk's voice became louder and louder. Link gradually felt uncomfortable. Moreover, he had long ears and was more sensitive to sound than ordinary people, which made him even more uncomfortable. The decibels were still increasing. Midona kindly helped Yaya block his ears. She looked at Link anxiously and asked him to find a solution quickly. Link was also annoyed by the noise. A blue light flashed in his hand and a round bomb appeared. Let you scream. He threw the round blue light bomb in his hand and took it out. It landed accurately and fell straight into Hulk's mouth. Ah! Blue flames rose up behind him and Arkle shouted, "Link, did you eat the wrong food? How did you become so much weaker?" Midona smiled. "It's hard to explain." With the help of Darkle's power, Link shouted, grabbed Mistin, and swung in a circle. Hulk drew a semicircle in the sky and then slammed into the ground, falling to the ground. Link exhaled and jumped from a high place. The potential energy of the fall was very strong, and he stepped on Hulk's face. Ugh! Hulk screamed in a muffled voice. This is not the end. Link sneered and took out the dragon scale sword. Standing on Hulk's chest. Bang bang bang. He smashed it randomly. Hitting other places didn't work, so Link specifically aimed at Hulk's head. Let you be fierce. Let you disobey. Let you throw a tantrum. Let you be unconvinced. Hulk waved his hands randomly, trying to catch Link. But Link was agile, and when he grabbed him, he immediately used bullet time to move away and continue fighting in another place. If Hulk wanted to stand up, he would use the time stop skill, and the golden chains would bind his body. This made Link's output even more severe. Hulk lost his temper and turned back into Banner. Banner was confused and saw a big sword hitting his head. He screamed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 321 Explode Link. Banner rubbed his nose. Although it hurt, he did not blame Link, who was apologetically standing by. Instead, he patted Link on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Well done." His voice was very nasal. Banner's nose was sour again after he finished speaking. Even in human form, Hulk's power can affect Banner. Otherwise, even the weakest Link would be enough to make Banner's brains splatter. Banner smiled and said, "It's right to teach Hulk a lesson. With you here, he will be much more obedient." Hulk roared in dissatisfaction in Banner's body, but Banner didn't care. Anyway, his relationship with Banner was very bad. Apart from anything else, being unable to have children for a lifetime was enough to make Banner hate Hulk for the rest of his life. Beep, beep. A call came in. Banner took out his mobile phone from his shorts. He didn't like using mobile phones because of his early experience of escaping. He was worried that this kind of communication equipment would expose him. But this mobile phone was developed by Tony and has a special satellite for service, so it is very safe. Of course, Midona and Fangar hate this kind of bulletproof and surveillance-proof mobile phones because it is not convenient to play games. Although Fangar is a dragon and was born not long ago, her intelligence is equivalent to that of a 13 or 14-year-old human girl. Her claws are also very flexible, and she especially likes to compete with Midona in some elimination games. After all, they are all girls. Banner answered the phone, and Natasha's panting voice came from it, which was particularly sexy, and then Natasha said in a hoarse voice, "2 Ultron robots are missing." Tony's voice also came, "I destroyed all the flying ones. There may be 2 that are hiding inside the factory and have not left. After all, the IQ of the Ultron I created can be guaranteed." Tony always has a strange sense of pride in some inexplicable aspects. Then Tony's voice sounded somewhat dissatisfied. "Link, please carry your cell phone with you. I have to call Banner. You don't know how terrible it is when you have an emergency and the person who answers the phone is Hulk." Midona smiled and said, "Why don't you just call me?" Tony said angrily, "The last time I tried to find Link, I couldn't get through. So I called you, but there was a scream from the other end." Midona was stunned. "When did you call me?" At this time Yaya poked Midona twice with his tender claws and screamed at her twice. Midona acted and said to Tony, "I happened to be away," and Fang answered the phone. "She greeted you, but you just said hello." Tony was stunned. "Are you blaming me for not understanding dragon language?" Fang nodded naturally. "Aha." Roger's voice also came at this time. He played an important role in the Avengers to get Tony and others' chat back on track. Roger said, "From the sound, Banner has returned to normal. Anyway, you should first track down whether there are any hidden robots in the factory, and you must eliminate them." Banner said in a gentle voice. "Okay." He stood up tiredly, his head a little dizzy. Hulk consumes a lot of energy even for breathing. According to Banner's physique and the energy reserves in his body, it stands to reason that, as long as Hulk transforms, he will kill himself due to lack of energy. But after Banner and Link had a lively fight, he returned to normal, but he was just a little confused and tired. Although he is the world's top biological scientist, the source of Hulk's power is still unknown. As for Link in front of him, Link suddenly turned into a shadow wolf. Looking up, like a lonely and arrogant husky, he was sniffing the smell to find the hidden robot. The source of Link's energy is also unknown. Although Link eats more than a bear every time, it is negligible compared to Link's terrible strange power. But compared to the source of Hulk's energy, the truth is vague. Link's energy has a clear answer: the blessing of the goddess. Tony and I are the defenders of science in this world. Thinking of this, Banner felt that he was carrying a heavy burden. After all, there are fewer and fewer things that can be explained by science. I don't know how Banner will react when he sees Ancient One. Midona and Fangs are playing happily on Link's back. They all like Link in wolf form because he is furry. Banner followed behind, and Link ignored the two little guys on his back and searched for the smell seriously. It smelled of dust and industrial oil, as well as some blood and the smell of gunfire caused by Tony. His ears also stood up. At this time, the wolf ears suddenly collected some information. Link raised his head in a hurry, and his figure twisted and turned back into human form. Fang and Midona, not paying attention, fell to the ground and yelled at Link angrily. Link hugged Midona and Fang and hurriedly said to Banner, "Run." Suddenly, there was an explosion in the distance, and then the whole factory shook. There were also several fresh cracks on the dirty cement road under his feet. The top of the factory collapsed. Boom. Link and Banner quickly ran to the exit. Outside the factory, the robot looked at the scene of its own detonation, and a smile that did not belong to a robot appeared on his face. Link had just run a few steps when he found himself surrounded by a large circle of explosions. A circle of explosions pushed towards the center, and a stream of heat had already made Link's cheeks hot. The building above was collapsing, and several steel pipes had fallen down. The walls are impenetrable. If it were the old Link, he would have only needed to rush in with Banner. He has the strong physique to ram the Dark Elf spaceship head on. But that's not possible now. Look at Banner on the side. Of course, Hulk also has this ability. Link only needs to hide in Hulk's arms and he will be safe. The Hulk's broad back is enough to block the impact of a nuclear explosion. And the nuclear radiation will at most make Link and Banner sneeze. But now Link and Hulk are in a bad relationship. Once Hulk is released, there is no guarantee that Hulk will not give Link a hug of love. Link can be seriously injured by Thor's casual palm strike, not to mention the Hulk who is not careful. Banner looked at Link. "Don't worry about me, just find a way to run away by yourself." Banner has tried many ways to commit suicide, but he can't die. He lay on the tracks and the train overturned. He jumped into the sea, but the deep sea fish couldn't bite him, and the ugly guys were so angry that they cried. He jumped into the boiler of the steel plant, and then a big green fat man jumped out with a shining body of molten iron. This explosion couldn't kill Banner. Midona looked at Link. "What should we do?" She was not panicked. If it really didn't work, she could just use the reality gem to mess around. The consequence at most would be to make this space fall into uncontrollable chaos. But she liked to leave things to Link to solve. Because Link has a special obsession with guarding, protecting and rescuing. The dependence of others will give Link endless motivation. Chapter 322. How to lose when the dragon rides on your face? Faced with Midona's question, Link shook his head. Banner frowned. "Can't you find a suitable way to escape?" Link nodded. But he walked forward calmly and ran towards the fast-moving fire. Midona looked helpless and muttered, "It's the same trick again. So boring. Can't you come up with something new?" Banner hurriedly followed behind him and shouted, "You are not." Midona smiled back, "Of course there is no suitable way, but there is an inappropriate way." The fire came. Link took out the crystal shield and used a shield counter. Boom. The explosion was bounced back. Use a shield counter to deal with soldiers and cannons. Use a shield counter to bomb impact, a shield counter to collapsed buildings, and a shield counter to splashing debris. In short, use a shield counter when you are in doubt. This is Link's battle strategy. Boom 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 boom. After a series of dazzling shield counters, Link escaped from the messy factory with Banner unscathed. Banner's expression was very wooden, and he didn't know what to say. The Hulk in his body also roared in dissatisfaction. He was very annoyed by Link's shield counter. Link was happily playing with the crystal Hylia shield with sweat on his forehead. The series of shield counters just now made Link very comfortable. The touch, counter-attack feedback, weight, and the feel of the crystal Hylia shield when swinging are all indescribably beautiful. It even made Link feel sad. He has used shields all his life and has played with both good and bad ones. But when he held the crystal Hylia shield, Link realized what kind of garbage he had used before. Exclamation mark. The two Ultron robots that detonated the factory were not far away. They were worried that Link and Banner would not die. If there was a chance of survival, they would go forward to finish them off. So the two robots, with their electronic eyes, witnessed the explosion and the flames, and the two men ran out, unharmed. At most they were soaked by the heat. Then there were two clicks. The two robots heard the sound, and looked at each other, and found that their iron jaws had fallen off in fear. Let's run away. Link. They are there. Banner had already seen the two Ultron robots with their jaws dropped. And Link also flapped his wings and flew quickly. Run. Robots are robots, and they don't care about shame or not. They don't even pick up their chins and start the thrusters under their feet and rush into the sky. One of them predicted Link's flying speed and said, "He can't catch up with us." And Link also felt it. He was ready to draw his bow and shoot an arrow to kill the two bad blasters with one arrow. But the two arrows flew out with force, piercing the sky and flying a long distance, but they dinged twice and were bounced back by the thrusters under the feet of the two robots. No, even if your aim remains the same, with your current strength, the arrow will have no power after flying such a long distance. Midona was wiping the sweat off Link's neck. Seeing that Link was unwilling to give up, suddenly cried out twice. "AA." Fang wrapped around Link's arm like a bear sucking honey from a tree until he was full. A nutrient with the high purity energy of Link's blood. Fang grew so fast that even Link himself didn't know that Fang's body had grown to such a level. The childishness of Fang now disappeared. Link felt that Fang had actually recovered the memory of the original Alone. Because this red dragon, which was not very big but was also majestic and domineering, was no different from the proud Alone in his memory. It was just that Fang didn't want to tell Link for some reason. But Fang cried twice, and the red dragon eyes looked back at Link gently, with a cute look that was attached to Link. The Ultron robot looked back, and saw a particularly handsome fire dragon approaching quickly. What is this? There is no such creature in the data. Link stood on Fang's back, and put the bow and arrow on the string again. The distance was now within Link's controllable range. The two robots began to disperse, and their flight paths swayed to avoid being hit by Link. But these tricks, in front of Link's invincible archery skills, were like mist that could be pierced and broken. Cluster. Cluster. Two arrows were shot out, and the black bow in Link's hand broke and exploded with a click, almost scaring Link. He hadn't encountered a weapon explosion for a long time, and it felt so strange. As for the two fleeing robots, Link didn't care about them anymore after shooting the arrows. Midona hurriedly said, "Hey, hey, hey. Are you too confident?" Link smiled and patted Yair's head. Yair shook her body sensibly and returned to her original small appearance. She wrapped around Link's neck and rubbed Link's cheek affectionately with her small dragon head. Midona had been sitting on Link's shoulder, watching the two arrows fly away, flying and flying. Boom. At the same moment, the two arrows released the power of thunder and lightning contained in them at the same time, hitting the two Ultron robots at the same time. The light in the Ultron robot's eyes disappeared, and its body fell. Oh. Midona exclaimed and turned her head to see Link's face up close with a slight curve at the corner of his mouth, smiling at her. Okay, okay. Midona smiled and ruffled Link's blonde hair. You know you're awesome, okay? What are you doing? Are you waiting for my praise? Coo. Link flew back to the factory to find Banner. When he came back, he found that Tony and the others had gathered, sitting on the cement pipe, watching the fire spread in the factory. Link felt that they were stupid. As soon as he landed, Tony looked at Link. Needless to say, I know you have dealt with the 2 Ultron robots. Midona tilted her head and looked at Tony. You really know Link. Banner picked up his phone. The screen showed local news and said with a smile. The news said that 2 unidentified robots fell between 2 farmlands and 2 farmers were fighting over the ownership of the robots. As a result, the local police confiscated the robots directly. Link counted the people and found that Thor was not there. So Midona asked on behalf of Link, where is the big alien? Roger smiled. This is why we stared at the factory on fire. Is Thor in the factory? Rogers pointed to a piece of fire. Midona asked, is he cold? Hawkeye couldn't help laughing. When he was chasing the Ultron robots, he ran into a ferocious wild boar. So he caught it and planned to roast it in the factory for us to eat. Oh. Link nodded and sat next to Natasha. He sat quietly on the cement pipe with the group of people, looking at the burning factory stupidly. Thanks to Time Flies, Sun, and Moon Pass for your support of 588 reading coins. Chapter 323 Hardcore BBQ. Thor came back from the barbecue with a dusty face. He looked like a handsome butcher, but his men were not very good at slaughtering and roasting pigs. There was no need to roast directly on the fire. All they had to do was carry the pork with the viscera removed and fly around the burning factory. The high temperature of the fire would make the fresh wild boar meat sizzle with oil. Although Thor had a rough face, he was a careful person. He was careful in noticing his brother's antics and protecting the pork. He got a clean piece of iron sheet from somewhere and wrapped the pork. This prevented the factory's excessive toxic smoke from damaging the meat. Hawkeye saw Thor fall heavily to the ground and shook his head. Even if I'm not hungry, I'll have a taste. I've never seen such a punk barbecue. Natasha was a little resistant, but she was a person who watched the atmosphere. Since everyone was interested, she could only participate. It's better than the Turkish kebab restaurant Tony took us to last time. Tony was a little embarrassed. Don't mention that kebab restaurant. Maybe the chef of that restaurant has been killed by the Chitauri army, and the one who cooked the food is a relative who washes dishes in the restaurant. Seeing that everyone was quietly waiting for something, Yaya was also curious. But when Thor lifted the iron sheet and revealed the pork inside, he immediately smacked his lips in disgust and shrank back into Link's hair to sleep. Midona was also puzzled. Is it that serious? Fly over the fire and let yourself and the wild boar meat roast together? Thor smiled. Little girl, I'm indestructible. What's a little fire? Everyone tasted the food silently, although there were a lot of things behind them. But because they had been traveling all night and didn't sleep much, they were a little lazy and wanted to rest for a while. Tony looked at the gradually fading fire and wondered about the slowness of the local firefighting. He said, Ultron is not that easy to kill. At this moment, Tony's Iron Man suit rushed out of the hot factory and reported to Tony. As a result, Tony disliked him for being too hot, so Iron Man quickly stepped back. Sir, no vibranium was found in the factory. Midona lay on Link's shoulder, her legs raised and asked, is it because the temperature is too high and the vibranium has dissolved? When she fell asleep in a daze, she did not hear Tony's explanation of vibranium. So Tony pointed at Roger's shield. This thing is made of vibranium, which is difficult to destroy and process. This temperature cannot pose a threat to vibranium. Tony put his 2 index fingers together and said, Ultron has transferred the vibranium he obtained when fighting us. He looked at Iron Man. Link returned Jarvis to me, but Friday, who is at the same level as him, has been destroyed by Ultron. If he invades Iron Man or Veronica in the sky, it will be an unimaginable disaster. Our current situation is exposed in Ultron's eyes. He will know immediately what actions we take. Tony laughed at himself. It's strange to say that I have always been the one who invaded other people's network systems, and then I have to worry about this kind of thing. Hawkeye ate 2 bites and was very disdainful of Thor and Link's reaction of eating directly without seasoning and eating so deliciously. He looked at the grease on his hands and said, "Let's find a temporary conference base. It doesn't exist on Earth. At least there is no information." Everyone was puzzled and got on the spaceship. Since there was no seasoning, not even Leo Gandmar, all the barbecue was eaten up by Thor and Link. Link ate a little more and felt a little more refreshed, so he began to think. Others were thinking about how to deal with Ultron, but Link knew that this matter would be solved by a vision. What Link wanted was to control the degree of the Sokovia incident. Let Ultron be born, but don't let the people of Sokovia be harmed. He called Zelda and the others and asked them to be careful. With Princess Washang and Loki, basic safety is no problem. The most important difference between Ultron and Vision: one is a machine, and the other is a living being. Ultron's mechanical way of observing problems and looking at the world will lead to the conclusion that humanity must be destroyed. He will not fall in love, nor will he fall out of love. So he will not do things like threatening Link with Zelda. The plane landed in a secluded jungle. In the isolated woods, a meadow appeared, and a small house stood alone on the meadow. Everyone walked down and entered the door. Hawkeye opened the door. After opening it, he smelled a familiar and warm home atmosphere, which made him feel a little tired immediately. Mrs. Hawkeye came over in surprise, hugged Hawkeye, and then hugged Natasha. Tony and others opened their eyes wide and walked into this ordinary but extraordinary house. The layout of the house is the ordinary American family style, but the location is not in the United States, but in XXX. Tony thought Hawkeye brought them to a secret base left by S.H.I.E.L.D., so looking at this ordinary house, he felt that everything was out of place. The old-fashioned TV in the corner, there must be a combat bow in it. It doesn't need to be used for combat, even if it is a sports bow bought in an ordinary store. Hawkeye can still exert superpower. Hawkeye's so-called wife's big belly, it must be a decoration inside. Maybe it is a special form of bulletproof vest, the kind that can take out 2 guns at any time. The 2 children who ran over in surprise, they must be little spies. I heard that Natasha seems to be the same age as Rogers and has been injected with an immortality potion. Perhaps these 2 children are killers who have eaten some APTX-4869 capsules and become smaller. They are super cold and emotionless. The 2 children shouted in surprise, "Link, you come to see us." The children happily pulled Link to talk. Hawkeye changed his usual coldness, held his wife's waist with his right hand, and said with a smile, "My wife, my children. After joining S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick helped me find such a place. There is no information about this place in the world. After all, my job is very dangerous, and my family needs to be properly hidden." He looked at the 2 children and smiled with wrinkles on his face. They like Link very much. They collected a lot of Link's posters and pasted them all over the room. They also couldn't understand that I was Link's teammate. Maybe it's because I don't have superpowers. Link is very good at dealing with children. Besides, his mental age is not big, so in a very short time, he established a deep friendship with the 2 children. The 2 children forced Mrs. Hawkeye to name the one in her belly Link. Tony met Nick after he was defeated by Rogers and the woodcutter. Nick had been here for a long time, but he had a bad temper and didn't show up properly. He had to hide in the straw shed where the tractor was parked, and his head was full of bites from the fierce mosquitoes in the mountains, just to be mysterious and suddenly appear to scare them. Chapter 324 Blockade. Nick walked out from behind the tractor in a cool manner. Tony was a little surprised. This was the effect Nick wanted. He scratched his butt secretly. A very tricky mosquito seemed to bite his buttocks, which made Nick regret not wearing more clothes today. "You created a monster casually." Nick looked a little unfriendly. Tony was also very annoyed about Ultron's affairs. He supported himself on the tractor with one hand and looked at Nick. "Listen, I've been reflecting on it." Nick spread his hands. "Yes, reflecting on the reasons for the destruction of the world. If we can survive on the remaining Earth by chance, it may be a driving force to help the new civilization grow." Tony sighed. "I saw it. Everyone died, teammates, and a bunch of strangers. The world is destroyed. It's that simple. This kind of thing will happen sooner or later. I have to do something." They returned to the living room, and Nick asked, "Where's Thor?" Natasha replied. She seemed to remember something and flew to find Dr. Eric. Roger smiled. It seems that your body has recovered. Nick smiled. Not everyone is like Link. Any part of the body is broken, and even if it is repaired, it can't be as good as the original appearance. In short, although the body is a mess, it can survive at least. Mrs. Hawkey cooked quietly. She was a virtuous wife. She knew the peculiarity of her husband, so she never asked or was curious. Hawkey rubbed his shoulder. He was injured in the shoulder during the battle when he was tracking Ultron. Hearing Nick's words, he couldn't help but wonder, don't you think it's strange? Logically, the human body is a backward thing. My archery speed is only the speed of an ordinary machine gun at the limit. Why would Ultron want to have a human body? Natasha looked at Banner. Not necessarily. Sometimes machines are indeed inferior to life forms. Banner walked over. I guess Ultron tried to build his own body in order to evolve. Tony muttered. Evolve into a more advanced human. That's easy. Just lengthen the human ears. Midona poked Link's face. Link, I feel like Tony is mocking you. Link looked up blankly. He was just playing with a child. Why did he get involved with him? Nick clapped his hands. No matter what Ultron wants to do, there is no doubt that his goal is to destroy the world. He glanced at all the members of the Avengers. And he thinks that the Avengers are the ones who are preventing him from destroying the world. And that's true. So what are you going to do? The two kids shouted. Of course, we'll leave it to Link. Nick was also cool with kids and said in a muffled voice, but Link can't stop Ultron from cracking the nuclear missile code countless times. Ultron's personality is too similar to his creator. Tony coughed, interrupted the topic in a hurry, and said, but it's strange that the nuclear bomb code has been changing. This shows that someone is helping us. And by the way, which idiot came up with the nuclear bomb launch process of the World Security Committee before? You can launch a nuclear bomb with one click, and you need to enter a password to shop, but your nuclear bomb is released by pressing a button. Nick shrugged. This is a sacrifice made for efficiency. Because that group of people mistakenly believe that they are always right and will not make mistakes. Ever since the World Security Committee attempted to use nuclear bombs to bomb the Chitauri army, they also learned a lesson and changed the nuclear bomb launch process to be super complicated. But Tony tried to crack it on a whim and found that the so-called super complexity was just like that. If Tony can't be stopped, then Ultron can't be stopped either. Ultron has enemies besides us, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I'm going to go to Hyperlink. I'll call Zelda over too. Zelda likes it there. Tony said. Rogers asked, what is Hyperlink? Tony smiled and said, my back garden, and it's also where I collect intelligence. Hawkeye suddenly smiled and said, it's another big mission that concerns the safety of the world. After this war, I should retire. Everyone. Mrs. Hawkeye looked a little surprised and asked, it seems that you finally have time to change the floor of our house. Hawkeye stopped his wife and said, I'll do it when I get back. Everyone. He smiled and looked around at everyone. Don't panic when I'm gone in the future. Everyone. Natasha hurriedly stepped forward and covered Hawkeye's mouth. Angrily, aren't you usually a very depressed person? Why are you talking so much today? Rogers wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Hawkeye's behavior reminded him of his last agreement with Carter. Hawkeye is a tough guy who doesn't talk much, but every word he says is tough. From just now till now, he has raised several flags. The two children cheered. Dad finally has time to play with us. Play, it's over. Roger's mouth twitched. Banner was also frightened when he heard it, but coughed twice. Be rational. Saying such things may not necessarily cause trouble. Hawkeye broke free from Natasha's hand and glared at Banner. Are you hoping that something will happen to me? I have never failed in a mission. Banner was shocked. It's not me, it's you. Alas. Hawkeye raised flags recklessly. Except for Link. Everyone heard it with cold sweat. Link certainly knew that Hawkeye would not die in this battle. Quicksilver died for him. Now Quicksilver has a broken leg and is being monitored by Loki. He can't catch up with the Sokovia incident. So, Hawkeye is indeed in some danger, but looking at the two eager children in front of him, Link unconsciously put on a confident smile on his face. Even if Hawkeye raises 100 million flags in one night, Link will also let Hawkeye survive the battlefield. The next day, Hawkeye kissed his wife and children goodbye. The Avengers didn't dare to look. Tony and Banner hurried to the hyperlink. Link followed Rogers and others to stop Ultron. At this moment, Ultron had half inducing and half threatening Zeohalen to use vibranium combined with nanotechnology to create a body that screamed perfect. Ultron pried off the infinite gem on the Mind Gem scepter, and the light of the gem returned from the light blue to the original orange-yellow. Carefully placed it on Vision's forehead. He smiled and said, "We should move." Many Ultron robots suddenly appeared around, surrounding the researchers here, including Zeohalen. In Zeohalen's horrified eyes, he raised his hand, and a red light of energy gathered in his palm. Boom. A young man with golden hair rushed over and threw a blue light bomb into the Ultron mechanical army without saying a word. It exploded immediately, and the surrounding Ultron robots and researchers crashed into the wall one after another. "It's you, the alien." Ultron looked at Link and rushed towards him without saying a word. He opened his hands, flashing red light and shooting out two lasers. Link's body moved out of bullet time, thrusting his sword forward, piercing Ultron's mouth, lifting it up, piercing his brain, and sparks of electricity flew out. Chapter 325 Street Racing. Link's sword pierced Ultron's brain and came out. Ultron's will was then transferred to other Ultron robots, and the surrounding robots attacked one after another. Zeohalen was knocked unconscious, and vaguely saw Link surrounded by several Ultron robots, and hurriedly shouted, "Stop him!" Mid-owner on Link's shoulder responded with a smile, "It's okay, our partners have already done it." A dry voice came from the Ultron robot, "You ignored the function of self-learning. I have seen through your fighting style." "Really?" Ultron robots attacked from all directions, impenetrable. Link also took action, turned on his toes, and held the shield to hit the fist of the first Ultron robot. Bang! The shield counter was unsuccessful. Link did not feel the familiar comfortable feedback on his wrist. But the defense of the heliocrystal shield itself was amazing. Even if the shield counter was not successful, it could easily block a punch. Then other Ultron robots attacked. Link waved his shield and clattered around, blocking the attacks of many Ultron robots. Then he turned over and passed through the Ultron robot's feet. This series of actions was very beautiful. Yeah, hid in Link's hair and cheered. But Link himself was unhappy, with his mouth pursed. In the previous shield attack, no shield counter was successful. Shield counter requires perfect contact of timing and position to be able to occur. Link was already very familiar with it, and a perfect shield counter was no problem. Yesterday in the factory explosion, a series of extremely cool and powerful shield counters could prove it. Just now, I tried nearly 10 times, but none of them succeeded. In Link's eyes, this result was stranger than the explosion of the Earth tomorrow. Ultron sent his own army to attack Link. "I have found a way to counter your moves." Link's face was gloomy. Mid-owner touched her head and muttered, "It's over." "Why did you say you wanted to anger Link?" A blue light bomb exploded in front of him. Link used bullet time to get out of the way, rushed forward, and stabbed with his sword several times in a row, with lightning flashing. The mechanical army that attacked fell to the ground. He had been looking for the reason why Ultron cracked his shield counter. Shield counter is very difficult to achieve. If any aspect is not in line with it, it will not work. And Ultron used the data generated by his large number of stand-in robots and Link's battles. Every time Link attacked, the attacking fists or other things were in a strange frequency, so that they could exceed the controllable conditions of Link's shield counter, and achieve the effect of breaking the shield counter. In this case, Ultron burst out laser attacks with both hands. "I have cracked the trick. You are just a defeated opponent of mine." The red light shone in this somewhat dark laboratory. Link knew that this laser attack also had a frequency that would interfere with Link's shield counter. Link stared, and time slowed down in his mind instantly. It's not bullet time, but a phenomenon of high-speed brain activity. He raised the crystal helioshield. Tap. The red laser returned at a 180-degree deflection, returning to where it came from. It returned directly to the original path, and burned through the chest of the Ultron robot. Ultron was still looking at Link in shock. "How did you do it?" "A little bit." Mid-owner stuck out her tongue. "You can learn, but Link can't. If Link's shield counter can be so easily restrained by you, what kind of trick is this?" Mid-owner looked prouder than Link himself. All the enemies around were destroyed by Link. Midona asked with the small headphones on her head. Did you catch Ultron's new body? Natasha's hurried voice was in his ears. Not even close. We are still racing with Ultron to create some diplomatic incidents for the two countries. Midona put her two small hands proudly on her waist. So, our combination is still the strongest. Link smiled. Xeohalen rubbed her head and came forward in surprise. Are you Link? I've wanted to see you for a long time. These ears. She looked at Link's ears as if she was looking at a priceless work of art. She was very curious about Link, who was similar to a human, but had a very different physique from ordinary humans. I heard that Link came from another world. It's amazing. Link smiled and nodded. He felt quite friendly towards the yellow people. Midona covered Link's long ears. She was dissatisfied with Xeohalen's excessive gaze. Midona looked at Xeohalen and blinked her big eyes. Auntie, we should go catch Ultron. Goodbye. Link, let's go. Auntie? Xeohalen's face rose. What's the matter with this old-fashioned provocation? I didn't do anything. But she didn't think too much, because her attention was attracted by Midona's strange skin color and body structure. Is she another alien? What a research-worthy material. Midona's eyes began to become fierce. Link was a little surprised. Why did Midona react so strangely to Xeohalen? Link turned around and left. Suddenly, he turned back. Before he could say anything, Midona said on Link's behalf, do you have a means of transportation? A researcher who survived by chance threw a car key to him. My motorcycle. Midona thanked Link and turned around and left. Xeohalen had always looked like he was about to say something but couldn't. When he ran out and saw the Harley motorcycle with a coquettish and exaggerated shape, Link knew that the researcher who looked quiet and a little weak on the surface was actually a will-o'-the-wisp boy. A blonde foreign boy who didn't look like an adult rode a motorcycle through the streets of Seoul. Link drove the motorcycle very fast, but he said that no matter how fast he drove, he would not hurt people or roadside stalls. But the traffic police in Seoul didn't believe his lies. So Link was like a leading goose, and soon a group of younger brothers followed behind him. Midona and Yair opened their mouths stupidly and blew air into their mouths at high speed. Link looked at Midona and asked her why she reacted so strangely to Xeohalen. Midona choked on the air and Yair laughed at her happily. That woman's eyes are disgusting. She looks at us like test subjects. Like the evil scientist in the movie. I'm afraid she will secretly capture you and do experiments. Link, At this time, Link had already caught up with the truck that was speeding up crazily. At this time, Natasha, who was fighting with the Ultron robot on the roof, was thrown off. She was about to fall on the road and endure the test of the hot tuzz. Link hurriedly accelerated and jumped over, hugged Natasha with one hand in the air. The other hand pointed at the Ultron robot that threw Natasha down. Click. Snapped his fingers. A lightning bolt struck the head of the Ultron robot and guided the telegraph into the car. The train rolled over and collided with other innocent vehicles. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.